The Senate Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Bailey. Senator Ellison. Senator Krasner. Senator Neal.
Here. Present. Please let the record reflect we have 4 members present. We do have a quorum. Please mark Senator Rogich, Senator Neal, and Senator Daly as absent excused. Should they join us later, please mark them as present. Good afternoon, everyone, to this early start of government affairs. Just to give everybody a lay of the land, we're going to take the bills out of order, and then we'll do the work session last. So I just want to make that clear because we don't have all the members present. We need them present for the work session. We intend to start with Assembly Bill 155, followed by Assembly Bill 103, followed by Assembly Bill 114, followed by Assembly Bill 333, and then we'll do lastly Assembly Bill 396. And then afterwards, like I said, we'll go into the work session. All of us at some point will be summoned because we all have bill presentations at some point. So it is going to be a little chaotic. We're all going to be walking in and out. Please don't take that as a sign of disrespect. With that, we'll go ahead and open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 155. And as a reminder for anybody who hasn't had an opportunity to join us in our committee, we ask all testimony in support, opposition, or neutral to be limited to 2 minutes. Should your testimony be longer than that, you can always email the committee and we can upload it to the onto NELA so that we get the full breadth of your opposition, support, or neutral testimony. And then also we limit testimony in total of support, opposition, or neutral to 30 minutes. With that, Assembly Member, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Orenshaw, and the esteemed members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. I am Assemblymember Selena LaRue Hatch. I represent Assembly District 25, which is in West Reno. And just as importantly, I am also a teacher and a parent, and that is why I am here today presenting AB 155, which is meant to take the first step in tackling our class size and educator caseload crisis. Now, for those that are not in education or don't have students in public schools, you might not know, we have the largest class sizes in the nation. On average, our class sizes are about 30% larger than the national average. Our counselor stats are also incredibly out of proportion to the national average. The recommended ratio from the American School Counselor Association is 1 counselor for every 250 students. In Nevada schools, the average is 1 to 1,200 students, and that is obviously an insane number for a single person to be managing. Same thing with our school psychologists, our social workers, our speech pathologists. Our ratios are not at a sustainable level for students to get the support that they need. And this is an enormous issue. It is an issue that's not going to be solved in one session or one bill, but this is meant to be my first step towards solving that issue. And so all the bill really does is it adds class size and educator caseload as topics of mandatory collective bargaining. So what that means is when unions negotiate a new contract with the school districts, there is a list of topics that they have to discuss. This usually includes hours, workload, pay, benefits. Many states include class size in that list, but Nevada does not. And so what happens is if the district doesn't want to talk about class size, which, spoiler alert, they don't have to, and they don't discuss it. And one of the biggest issues I have seen with tackling class size is we as a legislature are really handcuffed in the ways that we can address this. It's hard for us to attach specific money to specific class sizes. We have recommended ratios that are in statute, but those ratios are recommendations, and the districts apply for waivers to those ratios. And I looked it up, not one waiver has ever been denied. So we are essentially rubber stamping these waivers. And when you look at the importance of class size, it is not just on teacher workload and burnout, which is a part. It is also impacting individualized attention for students. It impacts behavioral issues for students. And in my opinion, I think that it is killing our teacher pipeline before it even begins because no student that is learning in a class of 45 wants to become a teacher. And I can throw stats at you all day long, but I want to give you a real life example. I have been teaching for over a decade in Washoe County School District. My classes in that time have ranged from 30 students to 45 students in each of my 6 classes, and I teach 15-year-olds. So if you look around this room, the number of people in this room right now is smaller than the average class size that I teach. And that is a problem that I think we need to tackle. And so with that, Chair, I stand ready for questions.
And thank you for your presentation. Members, any questions? Senator Ellison, please.
What's the average of the class size now?
So the national average class size is 15. My classes and typical classes for high school across the state are between 30 and 45. For our younger grades, it's a little bit smaller because obviously they need a little bit more one-on-one attention. But even then, in our younger grades, we have kindergarten classes of 25, which is out of control. A kindergarten class should be 12 or 14.
Is that because of the lack of teachers or lack of the size of the facility?
Assemblymember LaRue Hatch for the record. So it is a complex problem. There's multiple reasons for it. It includes lack of staff. It includes lack of facilities. But I think it also includes a lack of emphasis on the class sizes. I'm not saying that this bill fixes it entirely. It doesn't, and I want to be clear. But I think it takes a step in the right direction because we know our education pie is not growing this session. But I think under this bill, we could cut it up a little bit more creatively. Instead of teachers coming in and saying, we want a 10% raise, they could say, well, we actually just want to stay flat, but we'd like you to hire 50 teachers to lower our class sizes. Or we'll stay flat, but we want you to hire an extra professional to be in the room to support the class sizes. And so I think it requires more creative conversations about how to divide up that education money. And I think one of the most important things we do in this building is make sure that money gets to the actual classroom and the students, and not admin and not programs and any other nonsense that we don't need. And that's my goal with this bill.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, I'll invite you to sit back. And at this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 155. If you could please come forward. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dawn Etcheverry, and I'm the president of the Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for 125 years. I'm here to express our strong support for AB 155, which would make class sizes a mandatory subject of bargaining. Nevada has the largest class sizes in the nation by a wide margin. This is not sustainable for our educators or for our students. Research shows small class sizes close achievement gaps, improve behavior, and raise graduation rates. For educator, it means more effective teaching, better classroom management, and a higher morale. Class sizes is a critical workplace issue, and should be discussed at the bargaining table, just like salaries and benefit. AB 155 would not raise district cost, but it will ensure that class sizes is addressed through collaborative, respectful negotiations. We urge your support of AB 155. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores. Kayla Maese, for the record, Kaylahmaese, Civil Rights Analyst with the ACLU of Nevada. We support this bill, and I will ditto the comments of the last commenter. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Kent Irvin, ERVIN, for the Nevada Faculty Alliance in support of AB 155. We support the right of educational and professional associations to negotiate over workload, including class sizes. There are situations where workplace conditions are as important or more important than compensation and can be addressed by negotiation and mutually beneficial trade-offs. Teacher working conditions are student learning conditions. AB 155 does not affect collective bargaining for entry professionals. AB 191 is needed for that, but our members would benefit by receiving students who are better prepared for college when they get more attention in kindergarten through high school. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members, Todd Inglesby, representing the Professional Firefighters of Nevada. We support this bill. We think there's several good reasons, not only the outcome for kids, but obviously the safety allocations. We're having too many kids in there without being supervised, and especially during an emergency situation. So we think it's weird that we have class size things in childcare for younger kids, but not for older kids when they get more challenging, and it's more important for them to learn what they need to do and be successful in life. So we support this bill. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to come forward in support of Assembly Bill 155? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone line. Support testimony for 155.
If you would like to testify in support of AB 155, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite those wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 155 in Carson City or Las Vegas to please come forward. And we'll start I do see just one person in Las Vegas, so we'll start in Las Vegas and then come back to Carson City. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Chair Flores and members of the Senate Committee. My name is Anahit Bakhshatsyan. For the record, that is ANAHITBAGHSHETSYN, and I'm a research assistant at Nevada Policy. Today, we come in opposition of Assembly Bill 155. Nevada's existing collective bargaining framework already includes a wide range of mandatory subjects, as we heard about today: salary schedules, sick leave, employee safety, working conditions, and more. So adding pupil to teacher and pupil to specialist ratios to that list significantly expands the scope of negotiations and introduces potentially unintended consequences that may shift the focus away from what matters the most for the Silver State students, which is student achievement. Class size is undeniably an important factor in education, but it is also a complex budgeting and staffing issue that might be addressed holistically through legislative action and must be data-driven, not through bargaining tables. So giving unions the ability to negotiate class size ratios as a mandatory subject would risk creating uneven leverage towards employee organizations to pursue staffing levels that are not aligned with the district resources or with the student outcomes. Furthermore, it would exempt school district boards of trustees from considering the State Board of Education recommendations on the staffing ratios if they are using the collective bargaining data. This undermines the state efforts to improve educational consistency and quality across the districts. So let's be clear, the bill does not create more funding or lower class sizes. It just opens the door for many potentially unintended consequences and potentially putting additional burdens on school districts and schools individually. So for the sake of building achievement-centered education system, we would like to ask you to oppose the legislation today. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll come back to Carson City.
Chair Flores, members of the committee, my name is Susan Keema, Keema, and I represent the 17 school superintendents that make up the Nevada Association of School Superintendents. We must oppose at this time. We'd like to thank LaRue Hatch, Assemblywoman LaRue Hatch, for all the work that she's done on this bill. But at this time, we are going to oppose AB 155. Superintendents operate under current statute that defines class size requirements, and the State Board of Education requires variance requests if they can't meet those. This bill will create scenarios in which unions will seek to lower class sizes, which may contradict existing NRS 388.720. Understanding that there's a national teacher shortage and that NSHE cannot meet the requirements within the state for existing variances, this becomes a piece of legislation that will only create further issues within schools when districts cannot already meet targets. This will simply lead to a conflict between districts and unions. If you look at those variances at NDE, the variance requests, when you're putting in those variance requests and there's one or two students that are over the required amount, it doesn't justify, it makes it very hard for districts to afford, justify, and find a teacher to add to the classroom. We would suggest you continue on with your goals of working on that teacher pipeline. Superintendents would love to hire extra teachers. We just need to continue to work on that pipeline. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Nick Schneider, Director of Government Affairs for the Vegas Chamber. We are also here in opposition to AB 155. We have been long-time advocates for improving educational outcomes and supporting educators within the state. However, we do still continue to have concerns with the mechanism of requiring student ratios and collective bargaining agreements as a solution to this problem. We do believe that this could require additional significant infrastructure improvements that are outside of our current budget, and believe that we have not had enough time in augmenting our talent pipeline to provide an adequate number of teachers to meet this ratio. As such, we're in opposition to the bill. Happy to continue to meet with the sponsor, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We do have a question for you. Senator Ellison, please.
Thank you. How many, I know you probably don't know this off the top of your head, how many school districts are actually in your district for Chamber of Commerce?
So we don't directly, Nick Schneider for the record, my apologies. We don't directly represent any of the school districts. However, our members are located throughout the state, so in theory it would be a large proportion of the school districts within the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark. I'm here on behalf of the Nevada Association of School Boards, opposed to Assembly Bill 155. We firmly believe that the variable that it would exist if you're using per pupil ratios in collective bargaining, it's one of those variables that you could do your collective bargaining, you could sign your contract, and the ratios are just fine. But halfway through the school year, you find a new development is built, there's an influx of new children, now there is an issue with that pupil to student ratio, and now you're out of the contract realm, and you either have to hire more teachers or find another additional classroom space and that kind of thing. So for that inconsistency and for those variables, we oppose AB 155. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to come forward in opposition to Assembly Bill 155? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines. Opposition to Assembly Bill 155.
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 155, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Lynn Chapman, LYNNCHAPMAN, and I'm the State Vice President of Nevada Families for Freedom. The education reporter had an article. It said, quote, teachers like smaller classes. It's understandable. The advantages include fewer papers to grade, fewer students to manage, and fewer parents to deal with. The teachers union likes smaller classes too. Smaller classes mean more teachers and more union dues. Since the 1950s, the U.S. student population has increased 100%, while the number of workers in public schools have increased. Teachers increased by 243%, non-teaching staff increased by 709%, and that's per the U.S. Department of Ed. Teacher-pupil ratios in the United States have diminished steadily since the 1950s, when the ratio was 27 kids per public school teacher. In Nevada right now, it's supposed to be kindergarten through second grade 16-1, third grade 18-1, and fourth through sixth grade is 25-1. Classes are much larger in Korea and Japan, two countries that regularly rank much ahead of us in all the international tests. Class sizes pretty much irrelevant. Class size is pretty much irrelevant to what the kids are actually learning. It all depends on what is being taught and the skill of the teacher. But we have to be concerned with the budgets of the school districts. Class size depends on budgets, how many pupils there are, the schools, how many schools and how many classrooms are available. This whole subject matter should not be a part of collective bargaining because of all the budgetary problems it'll bring on. Please vote no on AB 155. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
Chair, it looks like you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll invite those wishing to testify in the neutral position, either in Carson City or Las Vegas, for Assembly Bill 155. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll go to the phone lines. Neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 155.
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 155, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Assembly member, please, any closing remarks?
Thank you so much for hearing AB 155. I just want to touch on a couple things. I think, first of all, the opposition you just heard proves why we need AB 155. Think about the number of times this legislature has allocated money to our school districts and then struggled to figure out where that money is going, or been frustrated that that money was spent on multi-million-dollar online tutoring programs, or more administrators, or raises for upper-level admin. We haven't been able to do anything about it. But if we add class size and caseload to collective bargaining, there is an avenue for that discussion to occur and for an entity to take action to make sure that money gets to the classroom. It is not surprising the opposition you heard today, because the districts don't want to talk about class size. And class size is essential for student learning, it is essential for student behavior, and most importantly, it is essential for teacher retention and pipeline. You may not know, but most teachers, the average is that they last 5 years or less before they quit, and that comes from burnout. And we also know, and you heard mentioned in the opposition testimony, that people are not wanting to go to school to become teachers. And I would argue that is because they are in classes of 45 students. And nobody that sits in a class of 45 rowdy 15-year-olds wants to become a teacher. And the last thing I just want to mention again, contracts are negotiated based on what is available. Districts do not have to agree to anything that they cannot fund and cannot implement. And contracts include clauses in which, if there is a major change, such as to funding or to enrollment, they can come back and they can immediately renegotiate. So this fear tactic that suddenly we won't be able to meet these ratios, I don't think is reality, considering the way negotiation actually happens. And so with that, for the sake of our children and for the sake of our teachers, I urge you to please support AB 155. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 155. And next, we'll open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 103. Assemblymember O'Neill, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the committee. For the record, I'm P.K. O'Neill. I represent Assembly District 40, which includes all of Carson City, all of Story County, and the eastern parts of Washoe County. I'm excited to be here this afternoon to present Assembly Bill 103, which revises provisions relating to the housing authorities. Presenting with me are Beth Dunning, Director of the Community Development for Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and Mindy Elliott, who represents several of the authorities. Before I turn it over to them, I'd like to just clarify, I had recently submitted an amendment in Nellis last week. However, I wish to withdraw that amendment now for consideration. Now I will turn it over to Mindy and Ms. Dunning for presentation on the bill itself. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblymember O'Neill. Good afternoon, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Orenshall, and members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. For the record, my name is Mindy Elliott, MENDYELLIOTT, with Flynn Judici Government Affairs, today representing Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority, Reno Housing Authority, and Nevada Rural Housing Authority. We would first like to thank Assembly Members Anderson and O'Neill for sponsoring this piece of legislation. AB 103 is a critical modernization of Nevada Housing Authority statutes, which are offering updated governance structures and development tools to meet the growing demand for affordable housing across our state. The bill was collaboratively developed with the three Nevada housing authorities to align NRS with HUD statutes, as many of the authority statutes have been on the books since 1979. This bill authorizes the creation of a regional housing authority in mid-sized counties like Washoe, allowing governments to consolidate resources and collaborate more effectively. It establishes a balanced board structure, including representation from participating jurisdictions. And Chair Flores, I'm happy to walk through the bill section by section if that is a desire of the committee.
Yeah, please, if you don't
Sure.
mind just going through it real quick.
Absolutely, real quick. Sections 1 through 5 are definitions. Section 2 defines serviceman or servicewoman as a person actively served in the armed forces, which aligns with HUD. Section 3 authorizes the creation of the Regional Housing Authority in counties between 100,000 and 700,000 in population, requires city, town, and county resolutions to participate. Section 4 establishes a 7-member board for the regional authority, including appointees from local governments and one housing assistance recipient. Section 5 grants regional authorities expanded powers, such as entering public-private partnerships, operating for-profit, and creating for-profit or nonprofit subsidiaries. These subsidiaries are exempt from open meeting law. Sections 6 through 11 are technical updates. Updates various definitions and clarifies that the new regional authorities are included in existing housing authority law references. Section 12 provides the veteran definition, updates the definition of veteran to match federal law under 38 U.S.C. Code 101, subsection 2. Sections 13 through 14, governance and compensation, provides that the executive director of a dissolved authority may become the initial director of the regional authority. Raises commissioner compensation cap from $80 up to $250 per meeting and removes the $240 monthly limit cap. Section 15's authority powers reaffirms that authorities have full powers necessary to carry out their purpose, including provisions from sections 2 through 5. Section 16 is operation area. It clarifies joint authority, operation boundaries, and consent requirements for overlapping areas. Section 17 through 18 is projects, operations, and profits. Section 18 allows rental rates to be set to support the authority's purpose, not just to break even. It exempts regional authorities from the prohibition on operating for profit and permits them to pursue projects using LIHTC, or low-income housing tax credits. Section 19 is tenant preferences. It narrows preferences to only those required under federal law, removes outdated specific income limitations and prioritization of veteran households. Section 20 is payments in lieu of taxes. It allows exemption from in lieu payments if the housing project qualifies for tax exemptions under NRS 361.082. Section 21 through 22, Rural Housing Authority, increases daily commissioner compensation for the Nevada Rural Housing Authority to up to $250 and exempts certain business entities from open meeting law. Section 23 through 27 is conforming and cleanup. It makes conforming amendments, authorizes continuity of actions, and contracts from transferred or dissolved agencies, and repeals outdated provisions such as obsolete veteran housing projects and certain drug eviction requirements. In conclusion, AB 103 brings the housing authorities in alignment. For Washoe County, it provides a pathway for broader board representation, increasing efficiency, and funding flexibility. For local government, it expands development tools through public-private partnerships. And for tenants, it modernizes tenant selection to align with federal requirements, potentially reducing administrative burden. It allows regional housing authorities to operate for profit and for nonprofit and for-profit subsidiaries, enabling them to leverage private capital and to access new funding streams such as low-income housing tax credit. In closing, AB 103 creates the flexibility needed to build more affordable housing in a rapidly growing state. It also respects local autonomy. Participation in a regional authority is entirely voluntary, requiring mutual agreement by local jurisdictions. We appreciate the bipartisan work of Assembly Members O'Neill and Anderson and stakeholders in crafting a thoughtful, future-focused bill. For these reasons, we respectfully urge your support of AB 103. Ms. Dunning with the Nevada Rural Housing Authority is available to respond to any technical questions the committee may have, because you certainly don't want to hear it from me. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you, Ms.
Welcome. And just wanted to make sure we didn't have any opening remarks. You're just here to bail them out in case we ask anything too difficult.
Beth Dunning, BETHDUNNING, and I'm just here in support and to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you again for the presentation. Thank you for walking us through the bill. Members, any questions? Senator Neal, please.
So I'm gonna work backwards, I guess. So I'm gonna work from section 20, where the section is, if a tax exemption is allowed for the housing project, according to NRS 361082, that is not required to make a payment in lieu of taxes. Can you explain why do you have this provision in here?
Beth Dunning. Yes, the statutes, the federal requirements that we have for using home funds or other federal funds, we have the ability to use a property tax exemption. It enables the property to function, the operations budget to function better. However, speaking on behalf of the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, whenever we have the ability to include a payment in lieu of taxes, we do so to try and help the local government. We know that in rural areas that can be helpful, so we try to do that. But not all budgets allow enough money to pay for the property taxes, so we'd like to ask for the exemption when possible, if it can't be worked out.
So in your explanation, you're saying that in lieu of taxes helps, so typically it's set up to help the local governments, but you want the ability not to have to do that?
We do provide, we try to incorporate a property tax when the property's budget will afford it, but not all properties make enough money to be able to pay those taxes. So it is important to have some flexibility.
Please follow up.
So I have a question on section 19, page 11. It's sub B. It's the strikeout. And I guess the way that reads, I just put computation of rent. But then when you read sub C 2, the requirements of this section do not apply to a housing project developed, operated, or managed by a business entity created pursuant to section 5 of this act. So I don't understand like what we're doing. It sounds like the subsidiary groups, which sounds like those are the business entities. Is that how you guys are treating these business entities? Because I'm not really clear. I don't understand why the business entity wouldn't have to do a computation for rent. It sounds like you're allowing them to have a higher rent or to be able to charge a higher rent. That's how I read it. Be able to charge a higher rent if they are a business entity created under section 5, which I believe is your private, this allows your joint authorities here. So help me understand that, because it's not a housing authority if you're basically saying you can charge whatever rent you want.
You use private entities as an ownership for affordable properties. So, for example, we might use an LLC because when we're using an investor partner for tax credits, it has to have an LLC that the investor would come into. However, the tax credit program itself has rental limitations and income limitations that would be used in that instance.
So walk me through an actual scenario. So business entity with the cross out. So you have C that's still there, which is computing the rental for the purposes of admitting tenants. But then you have the authority, this is the strikeout, should not accept any persons or tenants in any housing project if the person or persons who occupy at the time of admission have an aggregate annual net income less the exemption of $200 for each of the minor members of the family. So basically, that's the calculation of all of the members of the family that would be in that household. And so if you're a business entity that is going to now be operating under a housing project, operated or managed, what are you expecting that the rent is going to be, and what is it going to be calculated as?
Beth Dunning, for the record. I believe this is cleanup language because this is a very specific case of a rent calculation. And those calculations can change depending on HUD and the HUD requirements for incomes. And so I think what we're trying to do is to just clean up the language to allow us to follow the federal guidelines that our properties are subject to. We do still have income calculations that have to be done in order for someone to be eligible to live on an affordable property.
Okay. Vice Chair, can I continue?
Please go ahead.
All right, so my next question is on section 17. So in section 17, you have the authority may, and then you have lease, rent, and now any land. So this is an insertion of land, and so when you started out the presentation, you guys were saying you're in alignment with what HUD wants. Why do you have the insertion of any land in section 17? What are you planning on doing?
Thank you, Senator Neal. May I go direct?
Yes, please go direct.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Neal, for the question. For the record, Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs. The purpose of the land is, as we are moving forward, we are having the opportunity, the housing authorities are being provided the opportunity to enter into a land lease with the local jurisdictions. And currently, we had the opportunity, one of the housing authorities had the opportunity to enter an agreement with the jurisdiction. They were going to lease the land to the housing authority, and they were prohibited because we didn't have that in our statutes. So this will enter into almost a partnership with the municipality on the land trust, land lease, and it will lower the cost of construction of the project, which will in turn lower the cost of the rentals.
Okay, but in the testimony, you also said that who's not subject to open meeting law? Are these transactions subject to open meeting law?
For the record, Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs, this transaction would be subject to an open meeting law because it would have to go forward, it would have to go through the municipality in order for the lease to be arranged with the jurisdiction before the municipality could enter into a contract with the housing authority.
Please go ahead.
So section 5, this is the section, and I'm on the top page of page 5 of section 5, where you have the regional authority, this is new language under 315440, that they can jointly or with another authority exercise any powers, privileges, and rights that are exercised or capable of being exercised by a local housing agency. So talk to me about how the joint exercise of powers and privileges work with other authorities, and how give me a real life example of how that works. Because powers and privileges, those are different meanings. So a power by law, a privilege, and then therefore rights. And if they're jointly able to operate with each other or exercise, talk to me about what that looks like. Because that, I thought that was super concerning, because I didn't understand how that fit with what are your goals, what are you trying to do, why do you need that language?
Beth Dunning for the record. So to give you a real life example, if the Nevada Rural Housing Authority wants to enter into a partnership with a private business to create affordable housing, the housing authority, what we would typically do is we would put forth a resolution to our board in an open meeting that says this is the project that we want to create and this is the entity that we're creating that with. The board would then approve us to move forward with the project, and then we can create the additional entities and we can work with public-private partnerships to create additional housing. The meetings of those subsequent entities that would be created to build the housing would not be subject to open meeting law, but it would be a previously approved project within boundaries and guidelines that are provided by our board.
So let me get this right. Help me, okay, thank you for that example. So what delegated powers would be transferred in this kind of joint relationship?
Beth Dunning for the record again. Typically, the way I've seen that proposed is that we bring the goal of the project to our board, and we state we want to create this affordable housing project, and we are going to work with this entity and this entity and this entity to get that done. We usually state approximately what our budget is going to be. We usually list the types of financing that would be required to get that affordable housing off the ground. And our board would then provide specific members of the housing authority to be able to sign off on those types of financing and funding to get the project built within a budget. We provide them with a budget that says this is what our anticipated project costs are going to be, and we can work to sign contracts and put together deals within that budget. If the budget goes above by more than 10%, we come back to the board and we get authorization to move forward with an expanded budget. That way, we're constantly updating the board. The board is aware of what the project is and how it's going, but we have more flexibility and ability to work more quickly. If we have to come to the board for every single authorization, it becomes very unwieldy in order to get work done and to get things moving.
Thank you for that. So this is not subject to open meeting law. So you can create some form of public debt and then some delegation of rights that also may extend to, because let's say if it's already owned unit with tenants, then do the rights that that housing authority have, are those then delegated in terms of eviction, rent changes? I mean, I don't know, the language is so broad. I mean, it can, I'm just trying to understand, because basically it's not open to the public what this transaction is, but yet it's a very large power shift in that section.
There are federal guidelines, though, that we are required to follow in housing. So, for example, in your description of having existing tenants, if this partnership, we're going to purchase a property that had residents that were already living there, there are federal guidelines that would have to be followed above and beyond what the housing authority might set. So, for example, there's a Uniform Relocation Act that has very specific guidelines as to what an entity can and cannot do with a resident. You cannot displace them permanently without providing financial compensation. You can't just randomly kick people out. Our guidelines and the types of housing that we work with have a lot of other specific guidelines that come from the federal sources of funding that would cover the concerns that you have.
Thank you. No further questions, Senator Neal. Members, any additional questions? Senator Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and I have several questions along the same lines my colleague was just asking. Regarding the business entity, I think it's section 5, sub 1A through E, on all of that part of it. So, and I think we just went through on some of the business entities that you want, and then you just mentioned for potential business entities, you said that there's rules under federal law. Are they applicable regardless? Or are they applicable to you just because you're a housing authority? Or do you have to have some agreement and relationship with the feds in order for those rules to apply?
Beth Dunning for the record. I would say both. It can depend on the housing authority's involvement, and it can also depend on the federal guidelines that are tied to certain funding sources that we typically use.
So the federal relationship is tied to funding sources. If there's no federal funding sources, the federal rules you referenced in answer to my colleague was they would not apply.
Fair housing rules would still apply, so there are other guidelines that would apply that are not tied to funding.
Fair housing rules apply to everybody in general anyway, right?
Yes. And if we're using vouchers, public housing choice vouchers, has its own whole set of rules that come from HUD that are tied to the vouchers.
If we have that, but
yes,
a requirement to have that. Sometimes it's not available. There's a lot of other things that come with that. It's not always the preferred method for people to be doing that. And I understand the HUD rules is like for basically low-income housing, and it's federally subsidized and various things. And that's not the trend that I've been seeing or the direction most people want. They're all talking about, well, we want affordable housing, which isn't low-income housing and is not HUD financed either or subsidized. And then we have the whole new obtainable and all these different words and describing it. And I think people just try to confuse people with the terminology and myself. So I'm a little untrusting on some of this stuff. And because I don't know every little rule. I know every time I thought, yeah, I read this and this is when I went to the people that were in charge and they said, no, here's this other 500 rules that says we're okay to do what we're doing. So on this business entity, so the Reno Housing Authority, the way it is now, covers everything in Washoe County basically right now.
For the record, Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs. The Reno Housing Authority, yes, it covers everything throughout Washoe County. What this does, what the bill is doing, it is now broadening the representation where the city of Sparks will have two, city of Reno will have two, and Washoe County has two, and then there's a representative from one of the residents.
Understood, but we have, regardless of the makeup of the board, if we change all that stuff, we have a housing authority that exists now, covers Washoe County.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, yes.
Under the existing rules, there's none of this creating a business entity language. You can't do that now?
For the record, Mindy Elliott, they can, and they have, previously, the Reno Housing Authority has entered into agreements previously. So this aligns the language with the HUD definitions. And this is one of the reasons that we brought this language forward.
Let me just clarify on what I think I heard, is that the Reno Housing Authority can and has entered into some of these agreements, but only under the HUD rules with HUD financing or HUD ability to get vouchers or whatever it might be for low-income housing. So only in that arena.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, that's my understanding. I don't have a representative here, but that's my understanding, yes.
What this would do would expand that into outside of HUD, other mechanisms of financing yet to be unknown. You're using the word public-private partnership, which always causes the hair on the back of my neck to stand up. And then you're talking about under sub D and number 5 there, 5.1D, construct and operate housing for profit. Who gets to operate it for profit? Is it the housing authority, or is it a public-private partnership, or is it some other business entity you created? And then what are the rules similar to HUD on the financing part and what the rules would go to?
Beth Dunning for the record. I think one of the best ways to explain this could be that if Nevada Rural Housing Authority wanted to purchase an apartment complex and perhaps part of that property is going to remain for market rate, but you want to integrate lower incomes in there, which is a good way to get a mix of people into a property. The market rate increases your rents, which gives you more of an operating budget, which enables you to better keep the standards of the property up. You can do better maintenance, you can operate the property in a better position. So that could be one method. Another opportunity could be if we have tossed around an idea for creating for sale housing, building some single-family homes or townhomes and selling those at a below market rate price, so that people in that middle, like you said, there are a lot of different terms out there for affordable housing. So there's this missing middle, the people who don't make enough money to be able to get, they can't get rental assistance, they're on their own, and they're self-sufficient financially, but they cannot purchase their first home because the housing costs are too high. If we could sell it at a price that they could get, but we would want to be able to make some profit off of that, because if we can make a little bit of money off of that, then we can have a little bit of money to start the next property to be able to keep that going. Because there is no money out there for us to just go out and grab to do this kind of housing. So those are kind of some scenarios that I could see this being used in.
So on that, I guess it's a chicken and egg type thing. Where did you get the money in the first place to buy the apartment that you're gonna have? And I understand the mixed use, if you will. You're gonna have some apartments at subsidized rates based off of market rate on the other side, and you don't have a for-profit interest. So you can say, hey, I got some at lower rates, some at market rate, but the market rate's more than our operating costs, so we have that cushion there. Where did the money come from in the first place to buy that?
Beth Dunning again for the record. We're gonna have to get a loan. So if you have to get a loan and you have to put a permanent mortgage on the property, then that is more debt that the property has to support. So the rents have to support that. So if you, for your first property, you're gonna put debt on it. And then for the next property, if you have been able to make a little bit of profit, then you could potentially put less debt, and it enables you to keep moving things forward.
And I understand and appreciate that, but that's what gets me to the part on the public-private partnership type of a thing. So instead of going to debt, you're gonna go into this private partner, say, hey, well, I'll build you 5 single-family houses that then you can sell at a lower rate, but you're gonna incur that debt and the cost and his profit for however many years, right? Instead of just incurring the debt of getting a loan, you're gonna incur the debt to pay the guy back, plus his profit incentive and all that. That's why I always say public-private partnerships, good for the private, not usually good for the public, when you're coming in that chicken and the egg thing. So I'm just trying to figure out on the incentive on that. So on the part where you're gonna operate it for-profit, do you have some that you operate on a for-profit basis now, or other housing authorities allowed to do it? And if it's maybe the term is misleading, you're the housing authority, you're nonprofit, and you're operating this at, where you're not losing money, so you're saying it's for-profit, but it's not really a private business that's for-profit. It's not an apartment complex owner that's operating it for you in making his profit, and you get even a smaller piece.
Beth Dunning for the record, correct. Nevada Rural doesn't have anything that's operating in that manner to date. So.
No housing authority either?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm fine with the name change, and I'm fine with the board makeup and some of that stuff. And that was my question about operating at for-profit when others don't. And then, next question. Section 18. And I'm looking at subsection 3. And that's where we're going back to this business entity. So nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit a business entity created under section 5 of this act from taking any authorized action, or B, impose any restrictions on a business entity created by section 6. And section 6 was mostly existing language. So what are we trying to capture there? What was that line in the movie Evolution where they're gonna put fire on the alien that came in and says, take this ugly bag of snakes and lay them all straight out. Lay them out straight for me. Dan Aykroyd was the governor of Arizona when he said that.
Beth Dunning, for the record, I think we're trying to give ourselves options. Affordable housing is not an easy thing to create. There's a lot of these different layers. As you said, there's income-based housing, there's affordable housing, there's workforce housing. We are trying to give ourselves some options to be able to take advantage of opportunities as they come up. The guidelines that are in this NRS many of them have not changed since 1979. Financing has changed, HUD regulations have changed, the nature of housing has changed. We're trying to be flexible so that we can take advantage of opportunities to provide housing for Nevadans the best way that we can. And it's going to take some private partnerships to get those done. We're gonna have to be very careful about those partnerships. As you said, if you have a for-profit person, they're gonna want their money back. If you create the right partnership, then it can work. It can potentially work for everybody. So I think we're trying to be flexible and be able to take advantage of things as they come up with regulations and these regulations are outdated.
Statutes, not regulations, but nevertheless.
Sorry.
Statutes, yeah.
Sorry, statutes.
So additionally, in section 19, and you're deleting a bunch of language in that section about the operation and management, and then tenants. And I read all this stuff, and some of this stuff I think was the federal language that you were talking about. And if you have a HUD partnership, your tenant selection and all that stuff is pretty prescribed from what I've seen. And that's what you have as maybe required by the federal government pursuant to federal law and any contract for financial assistance. However, if you don't have federal HUD stuff, and a lot of developers don't want to do HUD, there's a certain sector that want to do HUD. They know they're locked into that for like 50 years or more. And there's a way for them to manage that and still make a profit and do all of their stuff. And I think that's worked nationally pretty well, but less and less people want to go that route. They don't want the thumb of the federal government on them for a long period of time. So you're looking for different ways to do a similar thing with only state restrictions and state rules in finding those partnerships. And it's just the tendency, human nature of people like, I believe you guys want to do more housing and various things. But I don't know that you always make the best deal. Well, I got this one in front of me, I need to go with it. It's not the best thing, but I'm gonna do it because I can put these houses along it, and it may not be a good deal for the state long term. So I'm concerned with subsection 2 of that, where it says the requirements of this section do not apply to a housing project developed, operated, or managed by a business entity created pursuant to subsection 5 of this act. So all of this stuff about tenant selection is out the window for these non-HUD managed or federal oversight financing options.
Beth Dunning, for the record. Fair housing still applies. I mean, there are still rules out there that do apply to housing, that you cannot discriminate, and those rules would still apply to a market rate type housing project.
Looking for another section, I saw it here a second ago, sorry about that, but it says, I'll try to find it here in a second, but essentially it said that these are rules or any rules agreed to by the local government agencies that are like in the deal. So if you're working with Reno Sparks, you're working with somebody else, whatever rules they put in the agreement are now the rules, not the rules you just cited. Whatever those rules are now the rules. So I'm just saying, there's a lot of moving parts on all of this stuff, and I just haven't had good experience. I believe, and I've known Mendy for a long time, is trying to do the right thing. I believe you're trying to do the right thing. I think PK is trying to do the right thing. I'm just saying that some of your partners are, I'm not sure they're interested in the same things you're interested in, which is
For the record, Mindy Elliott with Flynn Judici Government Affairs. I'll give you an example of a potential project that Nevada Rural Housing was looking at. As everyone knows, there's mining that's being expanded outside of Winnemucca. There was an opportunity to have a conversation where Nevada Rural Housing was going to we're working with one of the mining companies to create a partnership so that Nevada Rural Housing, because the mines, they don't know how to build housing, but Nevada Rural Housing knows how to build housing. So they were going to go into a nonprofit, or sorry, not a nonprofit, but an entity, an LLC, to construct housing outside of the Winnemucca jurisdiction, where Nevada Rural Housing and the mining would join the partnership. They would build the multifamily projects. Now, Nevada Rural Housing would stay in the project as Nevada Rural Housing because they have the expertise in how to manage apartment complexes, but still you have the LLC that owns the actual commercial project. So these are the types of, as housing is changing in Nevada, these are the types of opportunities that the housing authorities are looking at, whether it's in Winnemucca, Clark County, Washoe County, Carson City. They're looking at these types of opportunities as our economic development and landscape change. And the housing authorities are very prescriptive on what they want to do, how to do it. They want to make sure that they are serving the needs of the community. That's their first and foremost. And their boards, which are comprised of, in Clark County, it's a lot of public officials, no different than in Carson City. You have a voice on who's even serving on the board. And same with the new composition in Washoe. Those boards are going to ensure that whatever partnership or whatever opportunity is being offered to, no matter which authority it is, it's going to be for the good of the state, because that's their first and foremost responsibility, is to the people of Nevada. I know that sounds utopian, but that truly is what the responsibility of the authorities is. And I think that the example that I gave you is how the landscape is changing, and they can no longer just sit there and the other opportunities that the LIHTC credits, which are not expanding at the federal level, which everyone's heard about the lasagna and how we build housing, right? That the LIHTC credits are not growing, and the cost of housing to build is certainly have gone up. And Senator Daley, you're probably one of the experts on the cost of construction. And I think from the perspective of what the housing authorities are doing and what they're trying to accomplish, they need the tools so that they can be reactive and responsible. And the statutes as they were, HUD is also changing. They're in the process of changing their statutes. And the housing authorities want to be able to respond to what HUD is doing, what the opportunities HUD is providing to the housing authorities so that they can build and bring those resources to the state as quickly and as nimbly as possible. And I hope that helps.
It does, if I can, Mr. Chair. Final comment and wrap this up. I'll let other people, and we got several other hearings. I don't want to take up the whole day, but I understand enough to catch most of what you're saying. I don't know all the rest of the details, which is why I'm asking the question. So I would kind of say, I think you're hearing my concerns and some of the maybe holes in this that, maybe we can't anticipate, maybe we can. But I do also know that when an issue comes forward, people get motivated to do that and start trying to find ways and do things they wouldn't normally do. So you're hearing my concerns. Take them home, apply them, and don't let me hear any bad stories, because then I'm going to be very unhappy.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, Senator Daley, I think that we respect your position, your thoughts, and we're happy to come back in 2 years and provide an update to all of you about how we've been able to be provided resources to our state as it relates to housing.
Next we'll go to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a different question on Section 18. So because when I was looking at the repealed section on the public policy declarations, that's pretty much where you can find kind of the replacement of the public policy declaration. And I guess my question really is trying to get at is that the way that it reads, like when I see a declaration of public policy, number one, if I was to put a declaration or a finding at the top of my bill, I'm putting it there for a reason. I'm putting it there so that the courts will interpret my intent, that an agency will enforce law based on my declaration of public policy or the intent that I expect. So when I read Section 18 and it says that, it's declared to be the policy of the state and each authority shall manage and operate, et cetera, except a regional housing authority as formed pursuant to Section 3. And I understand what you're saying. I heard everything you said. We want tools. We want to be able to do these different things. Market rate, pretty much you want the tool to do market rate housing. That's what I heard. And so when I read Section 18, and then when it continues to say that to this end, an authority shall fix the rentals or payments for dwellings in its housing projects at no higher rate than it shall be necessary in order to produce revenue. So basically, the way that language reads is that you will be able to set the rent to the highest level that you need to in order to make it pencil in the project to pay for itself. That is truly market rate. So how does that fit into the actual need, I guess, within the population of 100,000 but less than 700,000? It kind of dovetails into what Senator Daley was saying. If everybody's talking about affordability, but basically you want the tool to basically do market rate housing where you can pretty much charge whatever rent you want, how does that change the scenario of what's currently happening in regards to folks being able to afford housing? You want the tool, but I don't see how you're helping folks by getting this actual authority.
I think the difference between a housing authority and a market rate builder is that housing authorities, we were created to have the best interest of the people of the states in mind. We need to be able to make enough money to keep the doors open and to keep the property in a positive functioning manner. And the rents that we set, we are very cognizant of what the rents are and what people can afford. We do have tools that we can mix in, such as the vouchers, and we have the ability to use those programs. And we're just asking for a little bit more flexibility to be able to set rents that are affordable, but may not fit into some of the other boxes that we already have. I don't foresee any of the housing authorities operating to a true market rate property. They're going to be mixing them, and they're going to be using, if there are market rate units, they're going to mix them with the affordable rents so that the property functions.
Get it. I just want to, let's say this bill moves out. At the end of the day, I think you either create a new legislative finding and declaration that says exactly what you just said and put it at the front of this, because that then encapsulates what this goal is. And it is not something that if someone was to challenge what the use of the housing authority or this newly created version, then at least there's some kind of legislative declaration that a court can look at or someone else can interpret on their behalf to say whether or not this is actually falling within those lines. Because you repealed the old law, which I could see that because it was saying, criminal use and some other things, and it's from 1989. But I really do want to see a reframed legislative declaration around those goals, because you're mixing pots. You also have, which I feel, lack of transparency when these kinds of collaborations are not under open meeting law, for someone to actually go in and look underneath the hood on how this deal looks. It's my final comment, Chair. I won't get back into this conversation.
And we'll go to Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So currently existing law creates municipal corporations known as housing authorities. You're suggesting with this bill to change it to an LLC, is that correct? A limited liability corporation?
No. This is Beth Dunning for the record. I don't think that's the intent at all. We'd still be operating as housing authorities, but we do need the ability to be able to start private, like LLCs, in order to combine funding sources with an investor group to be able to make a housing project work.
And
so typically, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but when we create an LLC, the housing authority is involved in the LLC as a managing member. So we're still a partner in the property, but we need to be able to bring in a private entity into an LLC to own the project in order to bring in additional funding.
so they're just two very different things. So a municipal corporation and the housing authority are there to, they only answer to the state that created them, and they are supposed to address housing shortages and help people to attain affordable, low-income housing. And that's why they don't make a profit, which you just said is what the problem you're trying to cure. And then we go to a corporation, which the only purpose of a corporation is to make a profit. So we have two very different things here. One that is dedicated to the people, to people that can't afford housing, low-income people, affordable housing, even if they don't make a profit. They don't care to make a profit. That's why it's a municipal corporation, right? Because it's dedicated to affordable housing for the people that can't afford housing. And then we have a corporation whose only purpose is to make a profit. They must do that, according to the law. And so if the corporation's only purpose, and this is going to be a nonprofit, this is going to make profit. This is going to be a for-profit, excuse me. What you're proposing in the bill is going to be a for-profit industry. If they're not making money because they're giving people that can only afford low housing a place to live, what will they do?
Beth Dunning for the record. So in the current LLCs that we are familiar with in our industry today, when an investor comes in, the investor in most of our properties that Nevada Rural has right now are part of a low-income housing tax credit. That investor is in for tax credits. So they're getting, we build a partnership, we manage the housing and run the housing. The investor put money in so that we could do a rehab on the property, and in exchange for putting that money in, they get a credit on their taxes for the next, say, 15 years. So I would say that when you're creating a partnership, it doesn't always have to be a for-profit. It could be for a tax benefit for an investor. It could be a nonprofit that you're partnering with to try and build something. There can be different reasons. It doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be the for-profit that everybody typically thinks of as having to make a ton of money or it's not worth having.
I'm sure, I appreciate what you're saying. I guess it's just, because it says it is going to be a for-profit in the bill. And that's why I just want to make sure that the people that have always been sort of looked after with the housing authorities, providing affordable housing for people that are low income, just make sure they're still taken care of. That's my only concern.
Beth Dunning.
Maybe you.
If I can make one more comment, Beth Dunning for the record, I think there are levels of profit, right? So a housing authority, we're not out there to make as much profit as we can. We are out there trying to make a little bit of profit so that we can keep the existing property functioning to its best, and also to have a little bit of money to take advantage of purchasing land or purchasing other properties to be able to, what if it's, a great example today might be office buildings. There are office buildings all over that are no longer being used because people have gone to work from home. If an opportunity, if we had a small amount of profit that we were making, we might be able to take advantage of a purchase of an office building and then do a conversion on that to affordable housing. But you need some money to be able to do that. So we're looking for a little bit of flexibility.
Vice Chair Orenshaw, please.
Very much, Chair. And I think my question's on that same section that Senator Krausner was asking on page 5. The language about the, jointly, starts with A, jointly, or with another authority exercise any powers, going down to the construct or operate a housing project for profit. If there was a project that this, here, wanted to, with a public-private partnership, wanted to construct and it wasn't going to be for profit, would that still be something you consider here, the way the language is written, or would it have to be something that, would be for profit? I just wonder if you could kind of give us a little more detail about that. I'm in section 5, but going top of page 5 down to kind of C, D, and E.
For the record, Mindy Elliott, when in 2019, when we originally put into law that the Nevada Rural Housing Authority had the ability to enter into a public-private partnership for the purposes of for-profit, part of the reason that we were given that authority was so that the Nevada Rural Housing could enter into this LLC, take the profits from, let's say they're building a 100-unit apartment complex. The thought was that 60%, and I'm just using this as an analogy, the 60% of the units would be at market rate. The other 40% of the units would be at perhaps 60% or lower AMI. And the idea was that, so these apartment units that you're receiving at a for-profit rate, right, at a market rate, would offset the cost of the 60% units or 40%. More importantly, the funding, if the housing authorities had the capabilities to enter in these types of projects, you have 30% of AMI projects that need those wraparound services that we talked about last session, where you have to provide counseling, you name it, the types of services that are being provided. Those funds need to come from someplace, and those housing authorities have the responsibilities. The vouchers aren't covering the cost of those types of wraparound services. So in 2019, when we originally passed this bill, the thought was that if the housing authorities have those capabilities to, I hate to use the word, make some funding off of a for-profit project, they could utilize those funds into those 30% AMI projects, 50% AMI projects, because the vouchers are only good for we only have a certain number of vouchers, right? But we still have the need for additional support throughout the state with or without the voucher system. So those funds that those housing authorities, whether it's Southern Nevada, rural, Reno, those profits that the entities are making are going back into the projects to really to help offset the costs of the projects of the apartment units that are not receiving those vouchers, A, or B, need additional support because of the tenants that are in there.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? Thank you again. I know there is a lot, but we appreciate you walking us through that. We invite you all to please sit back, and we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 103. If you could please make your way forward, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines, testimony and support for Assembly Bill 103.
If you would like to testify in support of AB 103, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. We'll invite those wishing to testify now in opposition to Assembly Bill 103, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll go to the phone lines, opposition to Assembly Bill 103.
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 103, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll stay on the phone lines, neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 103.
If you would like to testify neutral for AB 103, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Thank you. And we'll come to neutral in Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, any closing remarks? Well, you sure you want to open that door again, Assembly Member?
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 103. Thank you again for walking us through all those questions. And next, we'll open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 114. Welcome, Assembly Member.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members of the Senate Government Affairs Committee. I am Assemblyman Rich DeLong, representing Assembly District 26 in Washoe County, and I'm here to present on AB 114, which revises provisions related to county fair and recreation boards for counties that have populations of 100,000 or more, but less than 700,000. And that example is Washoe County. You may know the County Fair and Recreation Board as the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority, and that is the body we are speaking about today. This bill revises how members of that board are appointed, who can serve as chair, and who can elect the chair. So currently, the board consists of 9 members. 3 are elected, 1 from Washoe County, 1 from City of Sparks, 1 from City of Reno, and then 6 appointed members representing air service industry, tourism, other business and commercial interests, and then 3 from the gaming establishments. The board, the appointed members, the 6 appointed members are currently appointed by the 3 elected members. This bill changes that to that the appointed members are appointed by all 9 members, sitting members. And as far as who can serve as chair and how they're elected, currently the 3 elected members can serve as chair. This bill revises that such that any of the 9 members can serve as chair. That is the totality of the bill, and stand for any questions, if there are any.
Thank you,
Chair Flores, my name is Jesse Wadhams with the law firm of Black and Wadhams, representing the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. Not a ton to add to Assemblyman DeLong's presentation. What I will say is that this board governance bill was the unanimous policy of the board of directors of the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. This was a couple of changes that they felt would help them in how they govern themselves. And so the board members took that vote. It was the unanimous policy. And as Assemblyman DeLong mentioned, it basically does two things. It allows all of the membership to vote on new members as they are put forward, and it allows all members to serve as board chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Senator Neal. Senator Ellison.
Please, don't do that to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I tell you what, this is a hardworking board. They put a lot into that community. I mean, you couldn't thank them or pay them enough for what they bring into that community. So, you know, however they do their board, I think it's great because they work together so quite well. And that's a comment that you can, you know, respond if you want to. But I tell you what, it's for what they do to that committee and keep that thing going, and mostly during rodeo.
Chair, through you to the senator. Thank you for that comment.
Members, Senator Daly, please.
Just a quick question. At first, I didn't have any, but you said something that piqued my interest there. So the County Fair and Recreation Board, consisting of the 9 members that we're talking about, then you mentioned the RSCVA. Are they the same or are they different?
Senator Daly, appreciate the question. They are the same. We just happen to, in law, call the Convention and Visitors Authorities Fair and Recreation Boards. Why we do that, I do not know, but that is what they are.
Good, and I was just wanting to make sure where we were at, because when you call them the RSCVA and not the fair board that they're listed here, I was just making sure. Thank you.
Members, any additional questions or comments? Thank you both again for the presentation. And getting everybody to agree, I know, is not an easy task, so I do appreciate you putting that on the record. I invite you to sit back, and at this time, we'll invite anybody wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 114 to please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark. That's Tomclark, here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. Very much in support of Assembly Bill 114. Appreciate the sponsor bringing the bill forward. And this may seem like a minor change, but it'll have a big impact on how the governance of our Fair and Recreation Board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to come in support? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines for support testimony on Assembly Bill 114.
If you would like to testify in support of AB 114, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to go to anybody wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 114. Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines, opposition testimony to Assembly Bill 114.
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 114, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Now we'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position to Assembly Bill 114. We'll start with the phone lines.
If you would like to testify neutral on AB 114, please press star 9 now. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Lastly, we'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none approaching, any closing remarks, Assembly Member?
Thank you, Chair. Rich DeLong for the record. Appreciate the entire committee's hearing this bill. I would just ask that you pass this in work session this week. Thank you.
I think we could pass it next week, but I don't think it'll do you any good. Thank you for the presentation. We'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 114, and next we'll open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 333. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and Senators. For the record, I'm Assemblyman Ken Gray, here to present AB 333 to you guys. Along with me today is the Deputy Director of Nevada Department of Agriculture, Doug Ferris, as well as Senator Angie Taylor, one of my co-sponsors. And hopefully this bill will do some good for her community. That being said, I am going to step back and let the Deputy Director take over from here. I'm sorry, Ken Gray for the record again. I'm going to let the senator jump in, sorry.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Chair Flores, thank you so much for this opportunity. We know it is a crazy busy time, so we are just honored to have this chance to present to you Assembly Bill 333 to the Vice Chair and to members of the committee. Again, my name is Angie Taylor, and I proudly represent Senate District 15, which is in Washoe County, and we are here to talk about a bill that will have an amazing impact in Washoe County. It's exciting to be one of the sponsors. Thank you, Assemblymember Gray, for allowing me to jump in on this. It's a great opportunity and will have such an impact on our community. Assembly Bill 333 addresses an important issue in our county. It will properly align some property currently leased to the county and then open the door for a very exciting community development project. So that being said, now we will turn it over to the Deputy Director, and I will actually step aside as well so that cadence can come up from Clark County, from Washoe County. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Flores, Vice Chair Orenshaw, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Doug Ferris, D-O-U-G-F-A-R-R-I-S, and I serve as the Deputy Director for the Nevada Department of Agriculture. Today, I have the pleasure of providing you a brief overview of Assembly Bill 333, the Nevada State Fairgrounds. For some history on this, in 1867, the creation of the fairgrounds under the Board of Agriculture was entrusted to the Board of Agriculture. The property was for the promotion of agriculture. Following that, in 1951, the property was leased to Washoe County. And then again in 1971, it was revised, the lease was revised where the southern portion of the property was exempted from the trust, and that is where currently the Washoe County Building Complex and their offices are located. Over time, Washoe County's interests have changed in this property, and that kind of started this collaboration between the Department of Agriculture and Washoe County, being that the Department of Agriculture has ownership over the property, and the mission of the Department of Agriculture is to preserve, protect, and promote agriculture. Oops. Just to provide you some brief changes of what Assembly Bill 333 will do. NDA will continue to work with the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority, which currently has the agreement to manage the northern portion of the property, which is the fairgrounds portion. Under the oversight of NDA, there'll be an increased focus on the promotion of agriculture and agricultural education on this property. Additionally, NDA will pursue the return of the Nevada State Fairgrounds, or the Nevada State Fair, apologies, under the authority of the department, which we haven't had in many, many years. We haven't had a Nevada State Fair there. And then there's been an agreement between Washoe County that they will conduct a survey to establish the legal description for the two portions of the parcel. And there will be a joint agreement between the Department of Agriculture and Washoe County to continue to allow for use of the parking, depending on events. When we have big events like the Reno Rodeo and things like that, they currently share the parking lot with the Reno Rodeo, and we will do the same with Washoe County and through an agreement. And then finally, I have here just a slide to give you an overview of the property. The red line is the existing boundary, green line is the proposed boundary. Everything you see to the left or the south there would be where the Washoe County complex is currently created. That will remain under a separate lease, and then the Department of Agriculture will have everything to the right or to the north of that green line will be the Nevada State Fairgrounds, and follow into their oversight of the Department of Agriculture. And with that, I will turn it over to Cadence Matievich.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, CADENCEMATIJEVICH, representing Washoe County. As you heard from Deputy Director Ferris, this property has been under lease to Washoe County since 1951. It has been a privilege for the county to be the custodian of this property. As you heard from Senator Taylor, this is a very important piece of property in our community, and there's an opportunity now for our community to come forward and really do some exciting things on this property. But in order to have efficiency and to streamline that, we think that now is the time for this property to be returned, or the portion of this property that's the fairgrounds to be returned to the oversight and management of the Department of Agriculture, as there is a much closer nexus to their mission, to the trust that was originally established for this property, than what it is that Washoe County does and our core functions of government. Chair Flores, if you're interested, I'm prepared to do a walkthrough of the bill, but if not, okay, great.
Let's do it, please.
I'll try to do as quickly as possible. Cadence Matievich for the record. Sections 2, 3, and 4 address definitions, including establishing definitions for department and director for applicability to Chapter 551 of NRS, which governs fairs and exhibits. Section 5 requires the director of the Nevada Department of Agriculture to establish a state fairgrounds to be known as the Nevada State Fairgrounds, sets forth the department's responsibilities with respect to the fairgrounds, and grants certain authorities to the department to allow it to carry out those responsibilities. Section 6 establishes the account for the maintenance and operations of the Nevada State Fairgrounds in the State General Fund, and specifies that the account is a continuing account without reversion, establishes allowable use for the funds deposited in the account, authorizes the director to accept gifts, grants, donations, and bequests, and to deposit those in the account, and specifies that any interest earned on the funds in the account must be credited to the account. Section 7 makes conforming change to incorporate the newly defined terms in Section 3 and Section 4 into NRS 551.030, which pertains to state and regional fairs. Section 8 revises the duty of the Nevada Junior Livestock Show Board to review all uses of the property leased to Washoe County for use as a fairground, to review all uses of the Nevada State Fairgrounds, to ensure that any improvements or changes to the property continue to comply with the provisions of the trust relating to the fairground. Section 9 makes certain findings and declarations regarding the subject property. Section 10 terminates, subject to completion of certain duties required in other sections of the bill, the current lease with Washoe County for the entire subject property. Section 11 requires Washoe County to survey and generate a legal description for the portion of the subject property upon which Washoe County has constructed and maintains a county public building complex, and requires the administrator of the Division of State Lands of the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources to enter into a new lease with Washoe County for the portion of this property that is not subject to the trust imposed by Chapter 28, Statutes of Nevada 1887, as amended by Chapter 561, Statutes of Nevada 1997. Section 12 sets forth the duties of the Department of Agriculture regarding operation and maintenance of the portion of the property not subject to the new lease with Washoe County, requiring the director to recognize the trust imposed by Chapter 28, Statutes of Nevada 1887, and requires that the Department of Agriculture assume responsibility for any accounts payable by Washoe County for the subject property and existing contracts or other agreements entered into by Washoe County for use of the subject property or any building or facilities thereon. Additionally, this section requires Washoe County to pay to the Department of Agriculture any monies that it has on hand that were derived from use of the subject property. Section 13 specifies that the provisions of NRS 354.599 do not pertain to this bill. Essentially, Washoe County is on the hook for any costs that we incur as a result of this legislation being passed. Section 14 repeals various sections of statutes in Nevada that will no longer be relevant following the termination of the current lease between the state and Washoe County as directed in Section 10. And finally, Section 15 establishes effective dates for the bill.
Thank you for walking us through the history, the section by section, and also for the bipartisan work and both houses. So I think you checked all the boxes. We'll see what the members think, though. We'll start off with Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So in the picture, it said everything from the green line will be Department of Ag. Yes?
Cadence Matievich for the record. Senator Neal, as you look at the photo on the display there, so everything to the left of the green line will be what is in the new lease between the state and Washoe County, and everything to the right of that green line will be the portion of the property that will be managed and administered by the Nevada Department of Agriculture.
Okay. And so in Section 12, you're saying Department of Ag shall manage, control, and properly maintain that portion. What is the condition of that portion right now, of that land?
Cadence Matievich for the record. So the portion of the property that you see that's to the right of the green line, it is used as a fairgrounds. The Reno Rodeo is held there each year. The Nevada Livestock Event Center is there. It is in a functioning condition. It certainly is beginning to show its age. There are some improvements that are needed there, and I think you're going to hear during the portion of the hearing testimony from the community that there's a great interest from the community in investing in that property. But we need to be sure that the property is being administered relevant to the trust that was established when the property was deeded to the state. And again, not that Washoe County isn't interested in that, but we think that the Department of Agriculture, given their mission, is much better positioned to ensure that that's the case.
That's what I wanted to know. So Department of Agriculture, you're now going to be involved with capital improvements?
For the record, Doug Ferris, Senator Neal, thank you for the question. So we would still work in collaboration with the RSCVA as they do improvements, capital improvements on the property currently. With Assembly Bill 333, though, that's why we set up the fund or the account so where we could collect gifts, donations, and revenue into that can be put back into the property. So our hope is that between RSCVA and Department of Agriculture through that account, we'll be able to improve upon the property and the facilities to better suit the community.
Which opens up the other part of the question. How much revenue is generated now? Because what you're supposed to turn over current money, how much money are you turning over?
For the record, Cadence Matievich. Mr. Chairman, may I go direct? Senator Neal, thank you for the question. I apologize. I don't have the revenue numbers right now because, as Mr. Ferris said, Washoe County is under contract with the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority to manage these properties, and I apologize that I don't have their revenues. The portion of the bill that contemplates any money that we have on hand, we actually don't have any money on hand right now. We don't generate any revenue from the property. I think there was just an interest in being sure that if somewhere in our revenues, this property's been with us since 1951, that it maybe in those 74 years, there was something that was still tied to this property, that with this transfer, it would need to go to the state, which we have zero objection to whatsoever.
And that's why I really wanted to know, right? I think do I have, I think Department of Ag, it's one of my budgets and subcommittee. That's what I'm wondering, right? So it's passage upon approval. You're gonna take over land, you don't have any money. There's going to be some improvements that you're going to need to do in order to generate some money. I am wondering, are you intending on showing up at IFC asking for some money?
Thank you for the question, Senator Neal. For the record, Doug Ferris, and I believe, yes, you do oversee some of our budget accounts. So this, as was stated earlier in there, we are going to continue the agreement through the RSCVA. They currently manage it. We will only have oversight of the property. They manage the events, they take in the revenue, and they also take a portion of their revenue and put back into capital improvements and working on the property. We will not, as a department. The only funds we will do is through the account that'll be created here. If we collect gifts, donations, and things like that from the party, from our partners and such. We've already talked with Western Heritage, who I think you'll hear from today, also Reno Rodeo, things like that. If we're able to bring extra revenue in through that into that account, then that'll be work together with RSCVA's funding to make improvements upon the property.
So we can expect, I want that on the record, so we can expect that although in section 12 it says that you will be maintaining, Department of Ag will be maintaining, subject to the trust, that RCVA is going to be doing the maintenance costs, they'll be covering the liabilities.
For the record, Doug Ferris, yes, that's, I believe, if Cadence can confer with me, or can back me up on this, but that's how it currently operates through Washoe County through the agreement that they have with RSCVA. We're going to continue with that same agreement with RSCVA.
I'm gonna seal that little portion of this hearing for future budget. Thank you.
Senator Flores, through you to Senator Neal. Assemblyman Ken Gray for the record again. Madam Chair, that property, as it's being managed by RSCVA, is already generating revenue from the right-hand side of that red line. This is going to be extending that border, so they'll have more room within which to operate. So they're already maintaining the huge portion that you're already seeing, so it's not going to be much more. And as the Deputy Director said, the oversight, which they ultimately have the ultimate responsibility, the oversight will be by the Department of Ag. The actual people executing it, though, will be RSCVA. And I won't support anybody coming back and asking IFC for money.
Okay, I just, if you're not really in control, I just don't understand why there's, a no reversion of money where there is none.
Senator Ellison, please.
The history back on this was donated under the conditions it would never be sold. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Cadence Matievich, for the record, Senator Ellison, I do believe that that's correct, that this land was permanently deeded, that there was a trust imposed, as you heard during the presentation, in, I believe, the late 1970s, there were some amendments that were made to that trust. The Nevada Revised Statutes of 1977 contain those amendments, but the remainder of that parcel that is subject to the trust, I think if that trust were going to be amended any further, that would have to be an action of this legislature, and that is not being contemplated in this bill.
Thank you. And follow up, Mr. Chair. Then, because I knew that, and I knew the people that involved in that many years ago. But some of the questions I've got is the money that comes through the room tax, that the money that goes in, that's made from that little portion of that little fairground, that puts a lot of money back into Washoe, big times. By room tax and fuel and food and everything else. Do you get a portion of that money through room tax?
For the record, Doug Ferris, thank you, Senator Ellison. The department does not. That is through the RSCVA, and that is why the partnership with RSCVA.
I just want to make sure that that goes on the record, because how much money that's made do that and for the convention center for a little bit of everything. 'Cause we adjusted the room tax, I don't know what it was, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, but that little piece of land right there brings in a lot of revenue into the community, a lot. And I want to see it stay that way as much as I can. And the maintenance would be very minor compared to the loss in revenue to that community. And you see what happened in Vegas when they're wanting to move the NFR, and the amount of money that would have been lost in Las Vegas is massive. So I thank you for hanging in there. And well, as long as I'm here, I'll be there bitching and fighting for it. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Cadence Matievich for the record. Thank you, Senator Ellison. We feel the same way. I mean, like I said, it looks like a little piece of property, but for those who know, this property is tied closely to Nevada's history, certainly close to Washoe County's history. That's a very, very important piece of property in our community. And again, you know, our Washoe County's interest in this is not that we are stepping away from it, that we are looking to say in any way, shape, or form that we don't believe in this property. It's actually quite the opposite. We've been privileged to be custodians, but the time now is to step aside now and let this property be used to its highest and best use under the leadership of the department that has the closest nexus to what the land was deeded to the state for to begin with. Mr. Chairman, if I could, I do want to address a point that Senator Neal made, and it's particular to Section 6 about the account for the maintenance and operations, and it specifies that it's a continuing account without reversion. And Senator, I think that's because it's anticipated that the funds in that account will come from gifts and grants and donations, and that the folks who might be inclined to donate to that want to be sure that in fact that money is only available to be used for this and couldn't be swept into the state general fund. So there is no appropriation request to put monies into that fund. It's simply creating it so that those deposits and gifts, grants, donations have a place to go, and that the Department of Agriculture has a means by which to access them, but that they wouldn't revert because it's anticipated that those would be private monies. Thank you for letting me clarify that.
Next, we'll go to Senator Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just some clarifying questions. I'm familiar with the site and the county complex and the fairgrounds and the rodeo grounds, et cetera, from Northern Nevada. But you did mention, and I think answered part of the question, so the trust went in 1887, I think it was, and then the leased portion, now you're going to move over to the green line. I think someone said was exempted from the trust. That was legislative action to do that. I'm assuming there's some reversion rights that it has to go back. You can't sell it for some other purpose, only the purpose of the lease and the exemption.
Cadence Matievich for the record. Thank you for the question, Senator Daly. So yes, the current lease, which exists in multiple places in statutes in Nevada throughout many different years, does contain multiple provisions. I think it's anticipated, what's anticipated in this bill is that lease will be terminated, and it directs the state land administrator, and I believe that Mr. Donahue's here, and so certainly it may be more appropriate for him to confirm this, but that the direction would be that he would enter into a new lease with Washoe County, and that all of those things would be contemplated under the terms of that new lease that would be executed with the state land administrator.
Understood, but if the lease wasn't renewed, it would still just revert back to the state and would go back under the trust.
Cadence Matievich for the record. Correct, except that I don't believe that the portion of the property that's been exempted in the statute from the trust would automatically revert to the trust. I think that would take additional legislative action, Senator.
Just a little point of clarification. And then some of the other questions and things that came up. So the land currently is on a lease. You guys, Washoe County has a lease for all of it, or have you released it to a second lease to RSCVA? I know RSCVA manages it. And I know that management agreement, as our director said, is going to continue even under Department of Ag. Department of Ag is going to have control, but they're going to honor the agreement with RSCVA into the future for a variety of reasons. That's correct.
Hayden Smatievich for the record. Senator Daly, that's correct. The entire portion that you see within that picture right there, you know, absent the pieces that are
Bordered
right.
by the streets, Wells Avenue.
Yes,
and-
right. That entire parcel is currently, through statutes in Nevada, under lease to Washoe County. This bill will change that. The portion to the left of the green line will remain under lease. The portion to the right of the green line will go back to the state. Washoe County currently has an interlocal agreement with the Reno-Sparks Convention Authority to manage the portion of the property that you see to the right of the red line. What we would anticipate is that after the recording of the maps, the execution of the new lease, the reversion of the property to the Department of Agriculture, that the Department of Agriculture would assume that interlocal agreement with the RSCVA, and on the ground, business as usual.
Understood, and yeah, and that's the way I understand it as well. And the RSCVA is funded through the room tax and the various things, and they manage that property and the events and the various things on that, all designed to accommodate not only the local public, but people that come to visit and come to the rodeo and come to all the other events and things they have. They have lots of different events at the Livestock Event Center throughout the year, and partially meant to generate revenue for the community through taxes and additional room nights that funds the RSCVA. And it all kind of works in a circle, but I understand no changes there. Final thing, when are you bringing the fair back? I mean, I know there was big issues over that, and lawsuits and fights over who can have the state fair and where it's housed and all that stuff. We had it in Reno for decades. I remember going on as a kid, and it stopped. So when are we bringing it back?
Thank you for the question, Senator Daly. Doug Ferris for the record. I don't believe it'll be this year, but I would say, I think just some talks that I've had with the director and some of our internal conversations, we'd like to see in the next couple of years if it's possible. That's our goal. And I will say that the fair went away, or the state fair went away a long time ago. And I know there's another event that uses the name, the Nevada State Fair, but under statute NRS 547, the Nevada State Fair is actually under the authority of the Department of Agriculture and the director as far as where it's set, where its location is, and it's held once a year. So that's our full intention is to get a Nevada State Fair back and try and promote that in that community.
Understood, and that shouldn't cost. I mean, that should actually be a revenue generator and various things done properly. And Angie was shaking her head at me saying she remembers the fair, and all of a sudden it stopped, and it's been 10, 15 years, maybe longer. And it's unfortunate because I know a lot of 4-H, a lot of different stuff, a lot of agriculture events. People would bring their, Wilbur the pig in and all that kind of stuff to the fair. Thank you.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, I'll just briefly go into, I think the very first time I ever engaged in this conversation was when my chairman was Senator Ellison at the time, Assembly Government Affairs Chair. And I remember at the time in 2015, and it spilled over into 2017, there was a big argument back and forth on how we were going to utilize the room tax, and we talked about an increase at the time. And at the time, the decision that was made, and eventually I think we hit that final resolution was in 2017. I think the criticism at the time was that we felt that RSCVA was too focused on the property management upkeep side of things versus the marketing side of things. And I think at the time in 2017, we had the Wald Creek Golf Course, which we were having a hard time upkeeping that. We were definitely having a very difficult time with this property now. And at the time, the golf course was handed over because we realized that it was just easier to do that. But I remember the conversations we all had publicly and at the time in our working groups. We said, are we going to, as RSCVA and trying to help them do what they're doing, continue to move in this kind of path where we're focusing on bringing the humans in by making it easier to have more direct flights to Reno, making sure that we're attracting big projects in, and not be so involved in the day-to-day operation of property, not be so involved in the upkeep, being held, liable to maintain all this. And at the time, I think, they were talking about they couldn't really hold events because it was impossible to have the livestock there, and it just went on and on. So I'm just trying to understand. So this was 10 years ago that we were having this conversation, and now we're going back from that conversation from 10 years ago and saying RSCVA will continue to be in charge of all the event management. And now your role, I'm just trying to understand, and I get why Washoe is saying we have a definition of what we were supposed to be doing. We think NDA is the best to do that. But I'm trying to understand the nexus now on how we're going to take it to that next stage that we haven't successfully been doing in the last 10 years. So can you just walk us through methodically how many folk are going to be involved in this project? How many folk do you have that are going to be dedicated to this? Just help me understand a little bit more.
Thank you for the question, Chair Flores. For the record, Doug Ferris. So I wasn't involved in those conversations back then. I have heard about it, and I have some limited knowledge on it. I will say the only difference, I think, maybe now in meetings, we have met with RSCVA and things like that. From the department side, we have a handful of people that will be involved in this from our side. Also, the Nevada Junior Livestock Show Board, who has authority over the property, they'll have their involvement as well from that side, from the state side. I know in meetings with RSCVA, they've told us that this is one of their busiest facilities that they manage currently. I may be wrong, but I think it was 62 or 63 events they held last year. And so I think by creating or bringing this back under the Department of Agriculture, granted, we want to promote agriculture, that is our promotion, but we're all for, monster truck rallies, everything else, the motorcycle events, all of that. And I believe by being able to create the account in this where we can collect additional revenue to improve upon the property, that then us together with RSCVA, if we can improve upon that property, make it more attractive to bring more people in, I think that's our general hope, is to try and help from both sides, working together, collaborating to improve on the property.
And question, NDA's involvement, does that open up the door to funding streams, projects, federal dollars? I'm trying to understand if your involvement will allow us to do something that we can't do now. I understand the mission alignment, and that's really important, and I'm respectful of that. And obviously having more rodeo, Nevada's rodeo state, we need to continue to do that on all sides of our state, north and south. So I want to empower that and be a part of that mission. But I'm curious to know if you think NDA's involvement will open more doors for more funding, and maybe you don't know the answer to that. I'm just curious to know if that's something that's been a conversation that's been had.
Thank you for the question. Doug Ferris for the record. So I know in some talks that I've had with the director, I think by being under the state authority, we would be able then to have opportunities for CIP project funding as well, which in addition to the outside private funds that we collect, we may be able to leverage those as well to create more improvements for the property.
Chair Flores, if I may, Cadence Matievich for the record. I'd like to follow up on a little bit your question about sort of, okay, there were those discussions that happened 10 or so years ago around the RCBA, and I certainly don't want to speak with them, but we did engage them when we began contemplating this. And I think the intention here to continue and the transfer of the existing interlocal agreement was intended to acknowledge that following those discussions, they have stepped up. They have made capital investments in this property. They continue to make capital investments in this property, and that they made some of those investments in order to be able to better attract the kinds of events and bring air traffic and room nights into the community. And we didn't feel like it would be a fair thing to do to them, that as a result of this legislation, then an existing agreement that they've had, that they've been planning for, that they've staffed for, that they've been marketing this property to just, by way of this legislation, do away with those agreements. So that's really what that section is intended to address. That they have in fact been doing those things to allow the property, to the extent that it can be, used to its highest and best use. And so I feel like it's important to acknowledge that they've done that, and that's really why we felt like it was appropriate to require in the legislation that those interlocal agreements that we have today with them from Washoe County be transferred to the Department of Agriculture in recognition of their stewardship as well, in being the managers of that property for these many years. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify that.
And thank you. And I think everybody's in alignment with, we hope for absolute success. I mean, and I think the only question is who's the best steward for that. And I think we've been engaging in those conversations for a very long time. So I really do appreciate seeing you all here. Members, any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, I would like to invite you to sit back in the gallery. And at this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 333 to please come forward, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. We don't have anybody in Las Vegas, but we do have some folk joining us here in Carson. So please, whoever wishes to go first.
For the record, my name is Michonne Esquaga. That's MICHONNE-ASCUAGA. And I am here representing the Nevada Western Heritage Center Alliance. We're a 501c3 that formed about 4 or 5 years ago. We consist of business people in the area, community leaders, members of the Rodeo Association, and our task is to develop a plan to make improvements to the Livestock Event Center and to find the funding, both private and public, to make that happen. We feel very passionate about this project. It's in the heart of our city. And while I do think there has been maintenance money put into the project, it's like anything else. The building was built in the late 80s, and you get to a point where big things need to be replaced, and we're there with that. The current structure has kind of made it difficult to further our mission, and we think that by putting this under the Department of Agriculture, it just seems to be a really good fit. It fits with what we're trying to do there with advancing our Western heritage. So we wholeheartedly support this bill and putting it under the Department of Ag. And hopefully that might fill in a little bit of kind of the community effort to make something happen there.
And thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Chairman Flores, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Jim Neal, spelled N-E-I-L, and I'm the president of the Reno Rodeo Association, and the Reno Rodeo Association fully supports AB 333. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us, sir. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Sheila Bray with the University of Nevada, Reno. As you all know, the University of Nevada, Reno houses the College of Agriculture, Biotechnology, and Natural Resources, the only College of Agriculture within the state. We are also proud to host the 4-H Youth Development Program, which really is embedded in education within agriculture and the sciences that fall really within that. So we're really looking forward to this opportunity to, just as the previous speakers have said, highlight some of the unique aspects of our state and continue the education that comes along with the state fair. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll invite all three of you to please vacate the seats. I think we have some more folk trying to join us. Good afternoon, welcome. Whoever wishes to go next.
Chair Flores, members of the committee, my name is Joseph Guild. I'm a past president of the Nevada Cattlemen's Association, past president of the Nevada Agricultural Foundation, and current co-chair of the Cabner Dean's Advisory Committee at UNR. Just urge you to support this important measure for all the things that have been said before. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
For the record, I'm Doug Busselman. I'm the Executive Vice President of Nevada Farm Bureau. We are also here in support of this bill. We are looking forward to working with the Department of Agriculture in promoting activities that are agriculturally oriented and how that may assist in promoting that property to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Tom Clark. I'm here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. And much like Mr. Daly, I really want the fair back too. We remember as, when there's 4 kids and 2 parents on state incomes, this was our excitement, was the state fair as kids. It's a wonderful piece of property. And if this minor boundary line adjustment makes it so that the Department of Ag can partner with private side of things, as well as the RSCVA, to bring in not just the state fair, but so many other events that go into that facility. Mr. Squaga is right. There needs to be some improvements. And I think that there are private and public dollars available under this new scheme to make those kinds of improvements. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we stand in support of AB 333. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to come forward in support of Assembly Bill 333? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines. Support testimony for Assembly Bill 333.
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 333. If you could please come forward. Carson City or Las Vegas. Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines. Opposition testimony for Assembly Bill 333.
Chair, you have no callers at this time.
And I'm sorry, I went into a sidebar and I did not hear that. I wanted to confirm that we have nobody joining us for opposition over the phone.
That is correct, Chair. You have no callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll stay on the phone line. Anybody wishing to join us for neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 333?
Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And we'll come back to Carson City, neutral testimony for Assembly Bill 333. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. Charlie Donahue, D-O-N-O-H-U-E. I serve as the administrator of the Division of State Lands, and in that capacity, I also serve as the State Land Registrar. I just wanted to put on the record that I have no issues with this legislation and the responsibilities that it puts on the State Land Registrar. Look forward to working with Washoe County to execute that agreement and adjust that green line and assign the property for management purposes to the Department of Agriculture. I also just wanted to share with the committee that Division of State Lands is already actively working with Western Heritage in terms of some of the improvements, funding that they've secured for water and sanitary sewer infrastructure. We've agreed to enter into a hybrid certification process so that they can move forward with those improvements on the ground, and that will be an asset for the state. Happy to answer any questions.
I don't believe we have any questions or comments. Thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to come forward in neutral? Seeing none, please, Assemblymember, Senator, any closing remarks?
Assemblyman Ken Gray, for the record, Assembly District 39, and I'll make it real quick in the interest of time. Being from Assembly District 39, you guys probably know that's not probably anywhere near the Washoe County Fairgrounds. I had a bill that I wasn't going to use. I was approached, and the thing that sold me on this was that was one of the things we love to do with my little ones, was take them to the fair up there. And if we can bring that back, that would be great. And Senator Flores, as you rightly pointed out, this has been a very multi-partisan thing. I mean, we've had both houses, both sides of the aisle, different assembly districts, State Department, local government, everything. And this has come together very well, and we're just relying on you guys now to make it happen. And thank you so much for the opportunity to present this.
Thank you, Senator Flores. For the record, Doug Ferris. The only thing I just wanted to thank you for your time and everybody's questions and input. We greatly appreciate that. And one section we just really wanted to highlight on this that we think will help in promoting the improvements upon this fairgrounds is Section 5, Sub 3A, that allows us to enter into contracts with other legal agreements with the federal government, state officials, state agencies, local government, and entities such as that. So I thank you for your time and appreciate all the questions.
And we have one final question, Senator Ellison.
You guys gonna be allowing for market animals to be brought back in here and sold? Our 4-H groups used to do that a lot, so.
For the record, Doug Ferris, may I go direct. Thank you for the question, Senator Ellison. Absolutely. I mean, that's our goal, is to promote agriculture and get that back in there. As a kid, I showed my animals there, and I have a lot of fond memories of that area. And so this bill means a lot to me, and we absolutely want to promote that and continue it. So thank you.
And Mr. Chair, the reason I brought that up is our kids that do that, that's what they use for the college money. So it's a great deal. It's a great deal for kids. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for working with everybody, and we look forward to hopefully a couple of years down the road, just hearing how much more amazing work is being done there. And thank you to the community members who joined us today. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 333. And next, we'll open up the hearing on Assembly Bill 396. Assemblymember Bacchus, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the Committee on Government Affairs. My name is Shay Bacchus, and I have the privilege of representing Assembly District 37 in the northwest portion of Las Vegas. Today, I get to present Assembly Bill 396. It's a bill aimed at addressing Nevada's ongoing challenges by expanding the ability of homeowners to construct accessory dwelling units, also referred to as ADUs, as well as other measures pertaining to policy to lighten the financial strains of Nevada homeowners. As most of you know, Nevada was the fastest growing state in the nation from 1940 to 2010. However, Nevada has been hit the hardest during the Great Recession and COVID-19, resulting in disruptions in home building. Since 2010, our housing supply has struggled to keep up with the number of residents moving to Nevada. Nevada, like much of the country, is experiencing an affordability crisis driven by a shortage of available housing. Home ownership and rental prices have skyrocketed, putting financial strain on Nevadans. According to a 2023 American Community Survey, Nevada ranks 6th in the U.S. for excessively cost-burdened homeowners and 2nd for excessively cost-burdened renters. AB 396 is intended to address a few issues that came up over the last year in an effort to address the financial strains that Nevadans experience. Specifically, AB 396 can be looked at in 4 separate parts. 1, increase affordable housing through ADUs. 2, eliminate surprises at the time of closing on the purchase of a residence, resulting in a mortgage not being funded. Actually 3 parts, because I'm going to be removing a part, and we'll get to that when I walk through the bill. And the 3rd part would be to address abuses of HOAs issuing fines to homeowners and condo owners. Over the interim, IFC approved funding for the Gwynn Center to conduct an affordable housing assessment following the COVID-19 pandemic. In its report published in February of 2025, some key findings included Nevada lacks missing middle housing and accessory dwelling units. One policy suggestion is to encourage the construction of ADUs. The explanation from the Gwynn Center truly sums up the benefit of ADUs. Accessory dwelling units can supplement rather than replace other forms of housing production and put downward pressure on rents by increasing supply and competition among landlords. They can also help property owners increase their income and wealth while accommodating family changes and adding flexibility for the future. The state has various options for encouraging the construction of ADUs, including altering size requirements, relaxing minimum lot sizes, not enforcing parking requirements, or minimizing infrastructure mandates. The second portion of the bill is intended to address some legal challenges faced with rental units within a common owner community, which I will interchangeably refer to as an HOA, as well as issues that preclude financing of a unit. This portion of the bill is intended to be separate from the ADU portion, as I recognize that HOAs do have covenants that run with the land that a neighborhood would be subjected to, including the need to submit any plans for an ADU to the HOA for approval. Another legal challenge that is addressed through AB 396 is having associations disclose certain insurance with the resale package, as financing could be impacted with whether or not the owners association maintains insurance for the common areas. Here, we don't want homeowners to have to wait to the close of the purchase of their home to find out that financing could not be ascertained. The third portion of this bill was an attempt to address several constituents in AB 37's concerns over abuses by homeowner association boards. Specifically, homeowners were being charged with excessive fines, making their cost of living increase to the point some could not afford all of their monthly bills. An egregious exemplar of this was one owner received a fine immediately after closing on their unit, as the realtor had yet to pick up their lockbox. This specific HOA board levied fines upwards of $1,000 upon the homeowner. With AB 396, my intent was to strengthen guardrails against such egregious conduct. When this bill was presented in the Assembly, I had represented that I was committed to work with stakeholders, to which we have done, and that is why you have a pretty lengthy proposed amendment. I hope each of you were able to receive a copy by email. If not, a copy has been uploaded onto Nellis. I do want to represent, there was portions that were added, specifically section 7.1 and 7.2. At this time, basically until this bill goes away, hopefully passes and becomes law, those portions will be removed from this bill. Just because there's a lot of going back and forth, and so it's probably best that it be addressed during the interim. If I may, I would like to walk the committee through the proposed amended language that I had emailed to you. I will first go over the portions pertaining to ADUs, starting with section 1 of the bill. Subsection 1 establishes policy behind ADUs being a means to increase the supply of affordable housing. Subsection 2 establishes that certain counties and cities are to adopt ordinances permitting the development and use of ADUs on residential property. Subsection 3 ensures that any ordinance does not include conditions for approval of the ADU, such as prohibiting separate kitchen facilities or excessive parking. There is a typo because it has a require, so I'll have to clean that up when I remove 7.1 and 7.2. That was brought to my attention minutes before our hearing, which I'm grateful for. And also requiring more restrictive setbacks that is in existence for the primary residence. Also, the intent was to preclude ordinances that would require the homeowner to do off-site improvements. However, there are limited circumstances that I understand from our various county public works, where if an ADU has a driveway built, there may be improvements that are required to curbs and gutters, which is a part of the public street in their definition. So I have to tweak that a little too to fine tune that. But going on, subsection 4, incorrectly noted as subsection 3, ensures that all ADUs meet applicable building and health and safety codes. It also ensures ADUs do not have to meet commercial building or health and safety codes. Subsection 5 incorrectly noted as subsection 4, clarifies that this bill does not limit a county or city from simply implementing an ordinance that allows applicants for the construction of ADU to go directly to permitting and not zoning or limit the number of ADUs on a single property. Subsection 6, incorrectly noted as subsection 5, provides that this section does not apply in a region for where there has been created an interstate compact, a regional planning agency, and the regional plan adopted by the regional planning agency calls for the regulation of housing. More specifically, that would be our Tahoe area. Subsection 7, incorrectly noted as subsection 6, clarifies definitions used in the section. Section 2, 3, and 4 merely make conforming changes to other statutory provisions under Chapter 278. Section 11 and 14 require local governing bodies to implement an ordinance by July 1st, 2026. Then the HOA changes. Sections 5 to 10 make changes to Chapter 116 of the Nevada Revised Statutes, which govern the common interest ownership. Section 5 revises statutory provisions pertaining to amendment of the declaration. These changes include explicit limitations on who is able to modify the declaration that impacts unit boundaries and address leasing of units to the extent it has to meet underwriting requirements of the lender or insurance carrier of the common interest community. Section 6 revises statutory provisions regarding termination of a common interest community by clarifying that 80% of the units are those that are not owned by the declarant. And then obviously Section 7 makes confirming changes, and once again, Section 7.1 and 7.2 in the amendment are being deleted. Similar to Section 5, Section 8 revises statutory provisions regarding when an association may prohibit a unit owner from leasing their unit to specifically be limited to meet underwriting requirements of lenders of the first mortgage on the unit or insurance companies that issue insurance policies in the association. Section 9 revises NRS 116.4109 for resale of units to include proof of insurance policies that an association is required to carry pursuant to NRS 116.3113. This stems from the purchasers not being able to close after going through the escrow process because the lender denies funding if it is later discovered that the association is not carrying required insurance. Section 10, while it is probably does not go far enough, as I had hoped, it does increase the fine that a commission may impose from $1,000 to $5,000. This is anticipated to follow the scenario where a unit owner seeks relief from the ombudsman for owners in common interest communities in condominium hotels or commission for common interest communities in condominium hotels. AB 396 strikes a balance between state action and local control. It provides local governing bodies the opportunity to tailor ADU policies to their communities, which some have already done, while ensuring that housing growth is not stalled by bureaucratic inaction or excessive restrictions. Expanding ADU access is a pragmatic and efficient way to increase housing supply. AB 396 also aims to reduce the cost burden by HOA for duplicative, actually strike that, burden by abuse of excessive fines, while also limiting barriers to HOAs on elections and for rental properties. It also allows homeowners wishing to purchase a resident to know upfront whether or not the HOA has adequate insurance prior to closing by making insurance disclosures a part of the HOA closing package. I'd like to thank the committee for their time, and I am happy to answer any questions and hope to gain your support for Assembly Bill 396.
Members, thank you for the presentation, walking us the section by section. Members, any questions?
It's nice going last. Shay Backus for the record.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said Shay Backus for the record.
Oh.
It's nice going last.
We do have one question for you that's going to open the door for like 12 more, promise. Senator Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you. So, explain to me and see if I read the homeowners association portion right. And I know we had another assembly member had a bill here that was injecting the state legislature into what are otherwise local government land use issues. And if you heard that hearing, you found out I wasn't a fan of that. and that we should proceed caution in that area. So what are we trying to do on the homeowners association, and something about the underwriting, or did you alleviate those sections? The way I understood that is all of these rules would apply unless the underwriting provisions for loans or whatever in a homeowner association was gonna change the property value or change some of that, then they wouldn't have to comply with it.
Thank you, Senator Daly, by and through Chair Flores, Shea Backus for the record. And I want to.
To go direct.
Thank you so much. I want to remember to go over my 3 points. One, I worked excessively with our local government in finalizing this draft. I think your concerns about like maybe state, local government balance would have been probably a little more concerned with my original draft, but I'm hoping that they'll become neutral and explain that they're okay now that we've worked on this amendment together, so that there's like less interference, I'm not sure what word you used, with that. Second, the whole point is I know that with HOAs, you have covenants that run with the land. So HOAs have they create their own bylaws and rules for that govern a certain community. And so the intent was not to basically say HOAs, you need to accept ADUs. A person who lives in an HOA community would have to follow their rules by applying for, like, through their planning process to get their ADU as well. And then third, you were talking about the underwriting aspect and where that touches on, because in my mind, and I'm really bad about this, and for the senators who probably don't know me as well, I'm notorious for bringing really thick bills that may have like 3 or 4 parts. So in my mind, I kind of separated these, but it really still pertains, because one of the issues that kind of overlapped was the whole point of the ADUs was for whether it be multi-generationals or multiple different types of family members living on one property, but could also be rented for long-term rentals, not transient housing. We've kind of cleared that up because I was defining, we had to take away long-term housing, so that it's not meant to be an Airbnb. It's meant to be like someone could rent it, make money off of it. I've heard various stories from our counties where there's the reverse, where an ADU may be bigger than the primary residence, and people rent out, whether it be the ADU or the primary residence, for income in later years in life. And so the problem that we're running in on the HOA side, and I don't know if Attorney Michael Buckley is going to call in this afternoon or not, but he actually wrote a letter in support, and he's, I think, the current president of the property section of the state bar, I'm not sure, but he was really engaged in those sections. And the whole part with that was we didn't want a situation where, on the situation where you have common interest, where insurance carriers were pulling insurance if someone was having an Airbnb. And so the underwriting was that to make sure that insurance doesn't impede, and if it does, that an HOA could say, no, you can't have like an Airbnb in our community.
Thank you, because I was, I've never been a fan of HOAs either. I don't live in one, none of my kids do or anything like that. But I was reading this and I'm thinking, well, this might be one time it'd be an advantage to live in an HOA. And you brought up a couple of the concerns and questions I had, especially with the first version, where you said, if you don't adopt the ordinance, then there are no rules. And I'm going, I know right now if you're gonna be putting up some type of construction, you're gonna go 2-story, you're gonna build closer than the line you're supposed to. You have to notice all of your neighbors within 200 feet and all that stuff. And your neighbors almost have veto power on that, right? If the majority of them say, no, this is, not conducive to the neighborhood, then they can't do it. Is this gonna run over some of those adjacent property rights that currently exist, at least the ones I've seen in northern Nevada where I live?
Thank you, Senator Daly, for the question. Shea Backus for the record. It's intriguing because I want to give some exemplars. We have one county who actually, building an ADU right now is like building a pool. You just go directly to permitting, and so that's why I put in there the provision that there's no discouragement to allow like bypass of zoning. Other portions still require maybe the application to go to zoning. And I mean, I'm like you, I'm not a fan of an HOA. I'm in an HOA. I'd rather let people do what they want with their properties, but I know there's concerns for folks who are like, I don't like this. The goal is, the language was we've cut it back a lot to allow the HOAs as long as they, not, excuse me, allow the ADUs as long as they meet certain requirements, like the setback of the primary residence, so that someone's not building an ADU right on their property line, things like that. The issue with notice is the ordinance process is a process that involves community members who can come forward and discuss it. I think a lot of our communities, and I know they may be here or may not be here to talk today, can also answer this, but a lot of them have already been starting to go through the ordinance process. The key was little things like this. We had some ordinances on the books that would permit ADUs to be built, but they wouldn't allow someone to put a stove in the ADU. And the restriction was, for the purposes, it's an older law, was to prevent multiple families from living in a single family property. But I think what we're seeing as time's moving on, housing's getting expensive, housing availability is just not there. And I think just culturally, people are living with families now. You know, they have grandparents moving in, or you have sandwich generations, which could be grandkids, parents, and grandparents. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Sort of. I'm just saying, property owners right now, at least, I've received the notices and stuff like that. If somebody wants to build something and go a second story, that's not currently allowed. The 200 feet, I think it is, might be 300, it's county or someone can tell you. They have to notice all the properties within 300 feet or 200 feet of that proposal. And then they can give their comments in, and you have to get permission from your neighbors to be able to do that in current law or current process. And I didn't know if this would then just say, well, we got to do the ordinance, which I'm sure everybody goes to every ordinance that's ever been approved, right? So they all know what's happening. They're gonna say, wait, how come they can do that? And I said, well, you missed this ordinance we passed 10 years ago before you even moved into the neighborhood to say, is the neighborhood gonna be preserved, right? So that's what I'm trying to figure out. What are the rights of the neighbors to say, this is our neighborhood, what is acceptable in the neighborhood in regard to these accessory dwelling units or building multiple stories, a lot of different impacts in the neighborhoods. And right now, people have the right to be notified of those types of issues and give their input. And if enough of the neighbors say no, then you can't do it.
Thank you, Senator Daly, for that. The quick answer is it would be through the ordinance process that usually gives folks notice of what is happening with respect to zoning. But I wanted to say, and I was looking through this because we've had a lot of changes. At one point, and this was something I was okay with, and I think we eliminated it, was that an ordinance could be in place that it has to be like the community. And I think one of the languages was removed to preclude that from happening, so that if you're in an all single family residence, like one of the considerations was that you couldn't build your ADU as like a 2-story ADU when it's an all 1-story community.
Thank you. I'll hold for a little while. I still have my reservations on state government interfering with local land use. I like to say we're not in that business.
Senator Neal.
On your amendment on section 8, and this is where if the declaration authorizes the association to prohibit or restrict the unit owner from renting or leasing, but then you have sub A where it's talking about if it's institutional lenders that act or make loans. Break that down, because the way that I'm reading it, you are allowing the HOA to have some kind of say in the, explain it.
Happy to. Thank you, Senator Neal, for the question. Shay Backus for the record. This is that situation where if an HOA is having a difficulty, whether it's getting a mortgage or insurance due to the situation maybe with short-term rentals, that the HOA could preclude, like in their rules and bylaws, to preclude units from being used for such purpose. But the goal was, under other circumstances, that they could not preclude the use of units from long-term or like ongoing like rentals. Like, I don't want to preclude that. This was just that limited situation. And I know Mr. Buckley also his letter was pretty comprehensive, but it talked about a lot of other resources like online regarding like uniform laws that have been changing over time.
I guess how do they prove that though? How do they prove that they're somehow, that the HOA is being impeded by the short-term rentals and that preventing them from, how does that work?
Thank you, Senator Neal, for the question. It would work through like a policy. So if you had an insurance policy and sometimes it may be an exclusion or an attached endorsement that would say they would not cover for these purposes. That's how that would work.
And then I just had one question on the increased fines. So in section 10, so the administrative fine of 5,000 would apply in what circumstances? If they do the ADU without permission, or?
Thank you, Senator Neal, for the question. So this is the second portion of, or my third portion of the bill, which just pertains to HOAs in the governing body. So in that, they have the Office of Ombudsman and as well as the commission that could prosecute situations. So if you're living in an HOA, and this actually happened to a community within Assembly District 37, where a lot of condo unit owners were experiencing frivolous fines. And they would take little fines like your lockbox being left the day after you closed as almost like a health and safety fine, so they could slap $1,000 fine on these homeowners. And so what was happening was a lot of those homeowners started appealing, or not appealing, but they went to like the ombudsman for assistance. And so I was trying to find some meat so that these HOAs could be held responsible a little higher for these homeowners that were being dragged through the mud, other than just saying, hey, no, a situation you don't have to pay this fine, but so that if they wanted to pursue something further, or the commission could take it upon itself to go after that unruly, whether it's a property management company or that HOA for a situation. So it's similar, it's separate from the ADUs.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you again for the bill breakdown and joining us. I'd like to invite you to sit back, and at this time, we'll invite those wishing to testify in support of Assembly Bill 396. If you could please come forward. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, and to the members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to sit before you. In behalf of AB 396, we stand in support of the bill. My name is Maurice Washington. I'm with Americans for Prosperity. We support the author and the sponsor of this bill in her attempt to address some situations. We support the provisions dealing with ADUs. We think it's important that those that own property and are able to supply and build these ADUs on their property are allowed to do so. Somewhat have a problem with the common interest. We still think that common interest is a private organization that the residents has entered into a covenant with, and we're a little setback on that one. But most of us that live in common interest communities understand that they can either be for you or against you. And, sometimes we have to comply, but we've entered into those agreements. So other than that, we support the bill dealing with ADUs. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Cyrus Hojati, Hojjaty. I'm the team leader of the urban planning organization Strong Towns Las Vegas local chapter. We support this bill. We demand alternatives to land use and transportation. And one of the aspects we focus on is housing. For decades, we've had barriers to mixed use, missing middle housing, duplexes, townhomes, you name it. And of course, one of the reasons for that is parking requirements, and hopefully this bill can address this. And the other barrier is ADU. And actually, I have a ton of flyers that I'm giving to every legislature. One of this is 396 right here. It's a very important bill for us. It is the most effective way for people to have housing that has less noise. It helps young people get starter homes, build an opportunity, and not have to deal with the drawbacks of apartment housing. And for heaven's sakes, HOAs, these people, it's insane what they've turned into. They're going to have some sympathy. They're out of control. And if they're so concerned about parking, well, promote car sharing, promote bicycling. I don't even know how this got 15 no votes. I mean, if you're for property rights, well, you should be for this bill. And it's not just low-income people. Oh, and if there's going to be a couple low-income people, oh, big deal. It's not going to bring down the entire neighborhood. And even decent earning folks like me could use that. Even millionaires who get wealthy from the stock market want to save costs because we can travel more and come out here and bug you guys even more with the savings we have. So other than that, we urge you to please pass this bill. Thank you so much.
And thank you for joining us. We'll go to anybody else wishing to testify in support. If you could please come forward. Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines for testimony in support of Assembly Bill 396.
If you would like to testify in support of AB 396, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
And thank you. Next, we'll go to those wishing to testify in opposition to Assembly Bill 396. If you could please come forward. Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines opposition to Assembly Bill 396.
If you would like to testify in opposition of AB 396, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon, Senators. Unfortunately, I missed the in support of. My name is Michael Buckley, Buckley, and I wanted to testify in support of sections 5 through 9 of the SB of AB 396. The 116 comes from a uniform law. A number of these changes have come from the uniform law that were already approved by the uniform commissioners several years ago. And what they do is they protect the existing owners of the property by requiring not only the a majority of the owners, but a majority that includes owners other than the developer. The other provisions deal with, as you heard from Assembly Member Bacchus, the fact that some lenders or insurers are unwilling to provide loans or insurance if there is excessive leasing on the property, and this allows associations to address that. And finally, very important is a requirement that the association provide prospective purchasers with information on insurance. We worked on this through I'm a member and chair of the real property sector of the State Bar. Our executive committee has worked on these changes and supports them. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We will go to opposition over the phone, please. Did you have more people?
Yes, this is Eva Segerblom, Segerblom, on behalf of Nevada Justice Association. We are in opposition to this bill, and specifically sections 7.1 and 7.2 of the bill. I know the sponsor said that those sections may be removed, but as the amendment currently stands, this is going to change insurance for homeowners associations. It's going to leave a lot of areas of associations potentially uninsured, and also change the way that associations have typically worked. It's also going to change the standing for associations to pursue cases, and that's going to deny access to justice by changing that standing. So we look forward to working further with the sponsor to hopefully get rid of sections 7.1 and 7.2, but as it stands, we are currently in opposition to this bill.
And just for clarity, the Assemblymember Bacchus presented the bill without those two sections. She removed them in the presentation.
Correct, and we just wanted to state again why we were opposed to those two sections. The policy of the other sections we are not opposed to, but it was just those two sections that would change the standing and change insurance for associations that are problematic for us.
Okay, so without those, you're in support of the bill?
Yes.
Okay, so as she presented the bill, without those two sections, you will support. We appreciate you. Thank you for calling in. Is there anybody else wishing to testify in opposition? Again, 7.1 and 7.2 are not part of the bill.
Chair, you have no more callers at this time.
Thank you. We'll go to those wishing to testify in the neutral position for Assembly Bill 396.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Warren Hardy representing the Nevada Urban Consortium today. I would be remiss if I didn't first associate myself with the comments of my friend Senator Daley regarding the local government's responsibility in this space. But I would also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the legislature's ability to do it and the appropriateness of the appropriateness of the legislature weighing in on matters of policy that they believe are important. So I do think that's appropriate, especially in light of how well Assemblymember Bacchus has worked with us. She's heard our concerns. She's amended the bill in a way that brings us to neutral. I should state that we are really neutral on the portion regarding homeowners associations, but we are excitedly neutral on the rest because of the amendment proposed by the sponsor, and we again appreciate her willingness to spend a lot of time working with us and hearing our concerns and being responsive to those concerns. So, Chair, we're aggressively neutral. Thank you.
Hi, Chair Flores and members of the committee. My name is Ashley Kennedy, representing Clark County, and I just want to ditto the comments made by Mr. Hardy and thank Assemblymember Bacchus for working with us on the amendments. And obviously, during her testimony, she mentioned a couple other things that are coming that we are also supportive of those changes as well. At Clark County, we have done a lot to update our title so that to encourage ADU, if a homeowner to add an ADU if they wish. You can go as long as you meet all of our requirements in our ordinance. You can just go and get your building permit. And if you would like to do an additional ADU or you want an ADU that's kind of outside those requirements, you just go through a typical land use application process that is still pretty quick. So we appreciate the Assemblymember for working with us, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
For the record, my name is Vincent Guthreau. Last name is spelled Gutreau. First name is Vincent, Vinson. I just want to confirm, I'm here representing the Nevada Association of Counties. I just want to confirm the extensive conversations that we have had with the sponsor proponent of this measure. We thank her for the open door policy, the numerous meetings, and this amendment. We are also neutral. It brings us to a neutral position. We are opposed on the other side. So thank you very much. Just want to put that on the record.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matievich, CADENCEMATIJEVICH, representing Washoe County. Washoe County supports the intent of this bill, and we agree wholeheartedly with Assemblymember Bacchus that ADUs are part of the solution to the supply crunch that we find ourselves in our state, particularly for multi-generational and affordable housing. Assemblymember Bacchus has been phenomenal to work with through this process. Washoe County adopted a streamlined ADU ordinance in March of 2024. And as we've iterated through this bill, she's been really open to being sure that the provisions of our existing ordinance that do allow for these things to happen quickly and in a streamlined fashion remain in place. And so we are grateful to her. We look forward to perhaps a few more tweaks coming through, but at this point, we are neutral when we had been opposed before. Thank you.
And thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to come forward in neutral? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines. Anybody wishing to testify in the neutral position?
Your public line is open and working. You have no additional callers at this time.
Perfect. And Assemblymember Bacchus, any closing remarks? Nothing. We'll just say thank you again. You really do bring a wide range of perspectives into the room, and you made it work with everybody. So thank you for doing that. Thank you, Assemblymember. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the hearing on Assembly Bill 396. And members, as you are aware, we do have a work session document, and we will hand it over to our amazing community policy analyst, Mr. Johnston is back. Please.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Jan Schnitzbeck with the Research Division of the LCB. As nonpartisan staff, I cannot advocate for or against any measure comes before this committee. The first measure on the work session today is Assembly Bill 96, which was heard in this committee on May 5th. It requires that the master plan in counties with a population of 100,000 or more, currently Clark and Washoe counties, must include a heat mitigation element. Assemblymember Karras proposed the attached amendment after the hearing for the committee's review. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 96.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Vice Chair Ornshaw has made the motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 96. Do I have a second? Senator Neal has seconded that motion. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. If the nays could raise their hands, please let the record reflect Assemblymember Ellison, Senator Ellison and Senator Krasner are both noes. Rest of the members are ayes. Motion carries. And we will ask for the floor statement. If we could please have Senator Neal, could you please do that floor statement? Senator Neal will do the floor statement on Assembly Bill 96. Next on the work session document is Assembly Bill 128.
Jan Schnitzbeck for the record. Assembly Bill 128 was heard in this committee on May 2nd, and it creates the Public Records Task Force to evaluate and make recommendations on issues relating to public records requests, including access, cost, protection of sensitive information, and dispute resolution. Senator Neal proposed an amendment to include the Citizen Review Board in a list of entities that could participate in the task force. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 128.
So moved.
Vice Chair Ornshaw has made the motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 128. Do I have a second? Senator Neal has seconded that motion. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And we will have Senator Krasner, if you don't mind doing that floor statement. Senator Krasner will do the floor statement on Assembly Bill 128. Next, we have Assembly Bill 263.
Jan Schnitzbeck for the record. Assembly Bill 263 was heard in this committee on May 9th and requires the Board of County Commissioners of a county with a population of 700,000 or more, currently only Clark County, to notify the Mass Department of Sanitation before conducting a cleanup of a homeless encampment near a right-of-way controlled by the department. Assemblymember Mosca proposed the attached amendment that replaces the location of cleanup efforts from near to immediately adjacent to a right-of-way and clarifies the role of the department and the homeless outreach team in such efforts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 263.
So moved.
Vice Chair Ornshaw has made the motion to amend and do pass, and we have a second from Senator Daly. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And we will have the floor statement. If we could please have Senator Daly do the floor statement. Senator Daly will enthusiastically do the floor statement on Assembly Bill 263. Next on the agenda is Assembly Bill 392.
Jan Schnitzbeck for the record. Assembly Bill 392 was heard in this committee on May 12th. It requires that if a tribal government wishes to enter into a joint or cooperative agreement or contract with the governing body of a county or agency for any service, activity, or undertaking, the county's governing body may engage in discussions in good faith with the tribal government. There was one amendment proposed to the bill by Assemblymember Carter. And the amendment is attached for the committee's consideration and removes water districts, water authorities, or water reclamation districts from the provisions of the bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? Senator Krasner, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just heard today that there's some concerns on the bill by the Nevada Sheriffs and Chiefs Association. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to be a no on this.
Members, any additional discussion? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 392.
So moved.
Vice Chair Ornschall has made the motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 392. Do I have a second? Second. Senator Daly has seconded that motion. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those against say nay. Nay. If the nays could please raise their hands. Please let the record reflect Senator Ellison and Senator Krasner are nays. Motion carries. And if I could please have the floor statement, if we could have Senator Rogich, if you could please do the floor statement. Thank you. Senator Rogich will do the floor statement on Assembly Bill 392. Next on the work session document is Assembly Bill 433.
Assembly Bill 433 was heard in this committee on May 2nd and creates the Purple Ribbon Task Force on Firefighter and Peace Officer Wellness to review the existing state policies concerning personal wellness initiatives that account for the mental and physical health of firefighters, peace officers, and other law enforcement personnel. During the bill hearing, Assemblymember Torres Fawcett proposed amendments, and just to clarify, the amendment specifically to Section 1, Sub 2, Sub E, and would clarify that these local firefighters are union members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 433.
So moved.
Vice Chair Ornschall has made the motion to amend and do pass Senate Bill 433. Do I have a second? Senator Skip Daly has seconded that motion. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And if I could please ask Senator Ellison, if you don't mind doing the floor statement for 433. Senator Ellison will do the floor statement for Assembly Bill 433. Last on the work session document is Assembly Bill 478.
Judge Lisbeck, for the record, Assembly Bill 478 was heard in this committee on May 5th and a revised provision governing construction times in Clark County. There was one amendment proposed by Assemblymember Howdy, which is attached to the work session document. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you. Members, any discussion? Seeing none, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 478.
So moved.
Vice Chair Ornschall has made the motion to amend and do pass Assembly Bill 478. Do I have a second? Second. Senator Neal, second that motion. Members, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Motion carries unanimously. And if we could please ask Senator Daly, if you don't mind doing the floor statement. Senator Daly will do enthusiastically the floor statement for Assembly Bill 478. And with that, we are done with the work session document. Thank you. Last on the agenda, anybody wishing to join us for public comment? Good afternoon, welcome. Whenever you're ready.
Mind if I talk about a cultural trend? Does it have to be related to government affairs?
Well, we'll start it off and we'll see where it goes. I'm sure we can find some connection.
Sorry to hold you up. Cyrus Sojati, HOJJ, ATY. You know, there's been a lot of concerns floating across the internet, especially social media, about current male and female trends happening. Many people are unhappy with the dating scene. Marriage rates are coming down, birth rates are coming down, people are delaying commitment. Biological clock matters. So many individuals, especially men, are going overseas, hence the term passport bros. Many men are concerned about getting divorced because many argue that family court laws are biased and hence a decline in the marriage rates. And this system is clearly, no one has ever told me that it's sustainable. Really. And as a result, we're seeing the decline of the family. We've seen a rise of single-parent households. Honestly, nobody's ever told me how this can continue. But unfortunately, nature is a dictatorship. And nature tells me that we have to have a system that can sustain itself. And this tells me this trend has been going on for the last 60 years. And I'm not mainly talking about the laws. I'm talking about cultural trends. Because these factors, they're not really looking good. And a lot of people tell me, including former elected officials in the legislature, that we have to raise birth rates. This cannot go on any further. There's not much the legislature can do. However, I think we got to raise this issue because this trend could affect us for decades. So without further ado, wish us luck on this situation. I know it's off topic, but just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Anybody else wishing to come forward? Seeing none, we'll go to the phone lines. Anybody wishing to join us for public comment?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you. All right, members, before we conclude, I want to give everybody a lay of the land for tomorrow and Friday. We will be meeting upon adjournment of Leg Ops tomorrow, and we suspect that that will probably be closer to our typical meeting time around 3:30, 4 p.m. However, it's a Thursday, so I just want to make it abundantly clear that we do intend on meeting tomorrow at the call of the chair, which will be upon adjournment of Leg Ops. And then we will also be meeting on Friday, and Friday we intend to again meet upon the call of the chair, but on Friday we'll be immediately upon the adjournment of Judiciary. So Friday Judiciary, we'll meet right after them, and then on Thursday right after Leg Ops. Thank you all for the hard work. This meeting's adjourned.